homes to weekenders. He shows me hillsides strewn with logs where farmers have chopped down the timber to sell for furniture and firewood, clearing the land to make space for other, easier-to-grow crops like corn. We're the guardians of the land, but it's a struggle, he admits. Not only are the forests important for biodiversity, they're also a valuable way of managing and providing water for Salvadorians. The leaves on the ground and the trees help retain the rainwater and let it flow to the rivers more slowly, reducing the risk of flash flooding. Like many producers, Giancarlo believes the future lies in quality, not quantity. He takes me to the Government Institute of Coffee in the capital to meet Jorge Escobar, who's a quality control master. He's spent the last 30 years working in coffee and is an industry legend here. 80% of the country's 18,000 coffee producers are smallholders, and it's his job to help them measure the quality of their coffee, ensuring it's good enough to get premium prices in a tough international market. Jorge guides me through a cupping session, which is a bit like wine tasting, but with coffee. Counters are set up with lines of cups. Pretend you're a puffy sniffing the coffee, Jorge instructs me. I dutifully snuffle away at the freshly ground coffee beans. Sometimes first impressions can be deceiving, the president of the Salvadorian Coffee Institute, Carolina Padilla, explains. It can smell amazing, but that doesn't translate to taste. For her, it's all about consistency, making the best of the aroma last. You might be in a coffee shop chatting with your friend and leave your coffee to get cold, she points out. The taste must be perfect at any temperature because you'll remember that last sip. I'm told to sip the coffee as strongly as I can, like this, letting it swirl around my mouth, and then to spit it out so that I don't get too jittery from swallowing too much caffeine. Easier said than done. I'm jangling by the end of the tasting session. But by now, I can tell you that I like medium acidity with hints of chocolate, vanilla, blueberries and orange. Like many farmers around the world, Giancarlo and Carolina know it's a challenge to inspire the next generation to carry on in a tough and unstable market. For them, resilience is key. Their countries experience civil wars and natural disasters and still manage to carry on producing coffee. They see it as their duty for that tradition to continue.
Jane Chambers, fully caffeinated. And that's all for this edition of the programme. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope. And we'll be back again next weekend here on the BBC World Service.
That was the BBC programme from our own correspondent. I'm Saroja Coelho. Have a great day. Have a great day.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Today's high is 28 degrees with humidex going to feel like 33. So just sticky and humid. And we do also have a risk of a thunderstorm with that in Winnipeg. Welcome to the show. It's 18 right now. You're on CBC's Morning Show. We're here with you till 8:37 a.m. And thanks for being along with us. If you need us on the morning commute, 788-3093. Let's say good morning to the team. May McKillop is in. She's directing the show. Good morning, May. May's going to cover the commute on air as well. Good morning, Abby Adeyemi behind the controls. Abby's our technical producer, and we'll be covering the forecasts. And Kevin Ipatebo's in as well. Hi, Kevin. Kevin is behind the controls of YouTube this morning. Heather Wells is here also. She is over in our CBC Manitoba News Centre, and she has headlines.
Good morning. Well, people in La Broquerie are in shock after a fatal train collision cast a shadow on yesterday's Saint Jean-Baptiste Day celebrations. Reeve Ivan Normando has confirmed one person is dead. It happened as the town near Steinbach held its annual parade. RCMP expect to release more details later today. A refugee from Ukraine will soon have his graduation dream realized. 18-year-old Valentin Slobodian moved to Winnipeg last year from war-torn Ukraine. Well, this week he graduates from West Kildonan Collegiate and he plans to go into university. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, in the first hour of the program, we have our mental health column. Today, Mark Hannick's going to talk about the tools you need to counter mental health-related misinformation online. So there's a lot of it. Stay tuned for how Mark suggests we navigate it and what to watch for. Also, Heather just mentioned those two teens who graduated. They arrived here as refugees, and now they have something big to celebrate. We're going to hear more from them this hour as well here on the show. So we'll get a little bit of longer, we'll hear their story in a little bit longer format in the first hour of the program. Later in the show this morning, find out why a Manitoba couple is fighting for maternity benefits after having a baby through surrogacy. They're claiming discrimination because of how they had their child, so stay tuned for that. And then we're going to talk about phones, quote-unquote dumb phones. This is what they're being called. What does it mean? Well, it means it's a good old-fashioned flip phone or cell phone, doesn't do anything else. Are they making a comeback? That'll be a good talker. Right now, World Report.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Gracie Abrams has had a big year. She released her debut album, was nominated for Best New Artist at the Grammys, and opened for Taylor Swift. When the pop machine and its producers and writers came for Gracie, she said no and wrote songs with her roommate instead. She'll tell you why. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. In just a few hours, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Trade Minister Mary Ng are going to make an announcement about protecting Canadian auto workers. It comes as the federal government is under growing pressure to join the United States and put a tariff on electric vehicles from China. Janice McGregor joins us now from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, is this a sign Canada will follow the United States?
Marcia, this isn't simply a question of whether Canada falls into line with the Americans and announces tariffs on Chinese EVs. How Canada does it matters. Chrystia Freeland doesn't have the powers equivalent to Section 301 tariffs in the U.S. to allow her to simply match a 100% tariff. If Canada suspects China's exports are unfairly subsidized, the federal government has to investigate that first, calculate the economic damage of unfair trade practices, and then calculate its own tariff in response. So we'll see if the ministers kick off that process today and whether a Canadian investigation could even happen in time to line up with August 1st when the higher U.S. tariffs kick in. If China does not get due process, Canada risks harsh retaliation for violating world trade rules. But Freeland and Trade Minister Mary Ng are under pressure to act fast, not just from their U.S. counterparts, but Ontario's government too. Here's Economic Development Minister Vic Fedeli.
It's not really about our relationship with China. This is really all about our relationship with our number one trading partner, the U.S.
Federal Conservatives said Friday they're going to wait to see what happens before commenting, but the federal NDP totally on board with matching U.S. tariffs. Its industry critic Brian Massey said Friday that time and time again, governments react to threats instead of being proactive on these trade challenges.
The EU has already done something similar. How is that playing out with China?
Not well. Although the two sides in that simmering trade war spoke over the weekend seeking some kind of talks after the EU's intent to put a 38% tariff on Chinese EVs sparked not only threats of litigation at the World Trade Organization, but also a tit-for-tat retaliation against European pork products.
All right, thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. U.S. officials are expressing growing concern about an Israeli offensive into Lebanon. They are urging restraint just hours after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said some troops would be leaving Gaza and moving towards the Lebanon border. CBC's senior international correspondent Margaret Evans has more.
The sound of Israeli jets crisscrossing the skies of northern Israel is a near constant these days. Cross-border attacks between Israel's military and Hezbollah in Lebanon increasing, along with fears that the longer the war in Gaza continues, the greater the possibility of it spreading. Ofer Shala is a military analyst with an Israeli think tank.
If there's no stoppage to the war in Gaza and this goes on, we escalate and they escalate, we're getting closer. The margin for error is becoming smaller, ever smaller all the time.
In a rare interview with the local TV channel last night, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the intense phase of the Gaza war was nearing its end, despite reports from Gaza of more civilian deaths in Israeli airstrikes. over the weekend. Netanyahu said it would allow Israel to move some of its troops north for what he said would be defensive purposes. Before boarding a plane to Washington last night, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said he'll be discussing both Gaza and Lebanon with U.S. officials. The United States is our most important and central ally, he's saying, probably more important now than ever. Gallant's visit follows an ill-tempered outburst by Benjamin Netanyahu accusing the U.S. administration of withholding weapons from Israel. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Northern Israel.
In South Korea, at least 22 people have died in a fire at a lithium battery factory. South Korea's interior minister walks around a charred building just south of Seoul. Firefighters are pointing out the extent of the damage. About 100 workers were on site when the fire started, and most of the deceased were workers from China. Officials say the fire was started by a series of exploding battery cells. It's not clear what caused that explosion. In Churchill Falls, Labrador, firefighters are still holding back the wildfire threatening the town. Officials say they've created a fire break around the community to help slow the flames. About 100 evacuees are still in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Newfoundland and Labrador's Premier Andrew Furey says it's unclear when people will be able to return to their homes.
It remains a threat to the community, but the crews are doing an absolutely incredible job, and that has allowed the fire to really remain largely contained.
In Quebec, crews are trying to contain wildfires burning on the North Shore. Hundreds of residents from Port Cartier are out of their homes. They were ordered to leave on Friday. An Ontario woman who lied about her daughter's Inuit status is about to be sentenced for fraud. Karima Manji's twin daughters have been receiving big scholarships meant for Inuit students. She's scheduled to be sentenced today in Iqaluit, and as Juanita Taylor tells us, this is not her first fraud conviction.
Karima Manji will be facing a Nunavut judge this afternoon to learn her fate for defrauding an Inuit organization of nearly $160,000 in scholarship money meant for Inuit students. Manji applied for Nunavut beneficiary status for her twin daughters Amira and Nadia Gill, claiming they are Inuit she adopted from an Iqaluit woman. She pleaded guilty back in February. This is Manji's second time facing a fraud conviction. In 2015, she pleaded guilty to defrauding her employer, the March of Dimes nonprofit housing corporation, of $800,000. The Ontario organization provides shelter for people with disabilities. Nunavut Mute are anxious to hear what kind of sentence Karima Manji will be getting today for her daughter's financial gain from the Kakivak Association. Noah is the son of the Inuk woman whom Manji claimed was her daughter's birth mother.
The harms of this kind of a crime, it's victimized my mom, but it victimized other Inuit kids trying to apply on those grants and funds as well.
The Gill sisters were also charged with fraud along with their mother last year, but those charges have been dropped. Manji is taking full responsibility for the crime and claims her daughters weren't aware she had fraudulently obtained their Inuit status. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Iqaluit.
The U.S. Supreme Court could soon be debating the future of emergency room abortions. The justices will weigh whether doctors can provide emergency abortions in states where the procedure is banned. Today marks 2 years since the court overturned Roe v. Wade. It made abortion a constitutional right. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. Richard, what are we expecting today?
Yeah, we're expecting major demonstrations in front of the Supreme Court, and the Women's March have organized demonstrations in cities across the country. But there's another major decision that's expected any day now on whether federal laws mandating emergency abortions can override a state ban. Now, this stems from a law in Idaho where abortions are banned, and the question is whether doctors can perform abortions for emergency treatment. So a decision on that could have more widespread impact nationwide. Now, since Roe was overturned, more than 14 Republican-led states have banned abortions completely. Other states have implemented major restrictions. So, of course, this has sparked protest, legal challenges, and has become a major political issue heading into November's election.
What are we hearing from the politicians as this presidential race heats up?
Yeah, so this anniversary comes just days before the first presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and Democrats are making women's rights central to their campaign. Vice President Kamala Harris took aim at Trump over the weekend.
He said he is, and I'm going to quote, proudly responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade and taking freedom of choice from millions of women in our country.
Now, former President Donald Trump is leaning into it and taking credit for the 3 conservative judges he appointed who reversed federal abortion protections. So not only is abortion a political issue, it's also on the ballot this fall. At least 4 states have ballot measures asking voters to protect or expand access to abortion.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. What a sticky start to Monday we've got here. Right now in the city of Winnipeg, the temperature is already 18 degrees. We're going to head for a high of 28. Abby's in with more on the weather in a moment. Hopefully you had a wonderful weekend, and you might be listening on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, or watching on YouTube this morning. This hour on the program, we're going to be hearing about the stories of 2 teenagers who came to Canada last year as refugees. They've now graduated here in Winnipeg. They're set to go to university in the fall. We're going to have their story straight ahead as it is grad season. In addition, this hour, a new poll says 43% of Canadians are committed to the federal policy of bilingualism, and that climbs to 70% in Quebec. We asked a filmmaker who chronicled the early days of French immersion in this country, teaching in Canada, about what she thinks this poll actually means. Stay tuned. And I want to briefly mention our mental health column this hour, because today Mark Hennick's going to look at how to counter mental health related misinformation when you come across it online or on social media. So stay tuned. That's coming up just before 7. Right now with a news update, Heather Wells is in. Good morning.
Good morning. A Manitoba family says they are being discriminated against because they had their daughter through surrogacy in October. They don't qualify for maternity benefits. Tim Blazanovic says his wife can't get top-up benefits from her job at Pan Am Clinic. She met all the requirements for paid maternity leave under the collective agreement, except being able to provide a certificate of pregnancy and her estimated due date. We'll hear more on this story. As well, we expect to learn more from RCMP today about a deadly train collision in La Broquerie yesterday. People there are in shock after the incident in the middle of the town's Saint Jean-Baptiste Day celebrations. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
That story is so sad, Heather, as they were celebrating, and apparently the bells were going off and they could hear the brakes from the train. I was reading the articles this morning.
Right.
Yeah. So thoughts with people there today as they sort through, their feelings about yesterday, but also as awaiting more information, as you said, in confirmation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what else is happening here. I promised a chat about the forecast with Mr. Abby Adeyemi. Hi.
Good morning, Marcy. How was your first weekend in summer?
Oh, yeah. It was the first official weekend. Yesterday was gorgeous. I thought it was going to rain on our heads, and it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that was enjoyable. I thought it was a nice day. It was kind of cool in the morning, like kind of flipped from sun to cloud, nice in the afternoon. And then, just a little bit sticky overall, though. Like, I feel like that humidity just stays in your bones.
Yeah, that started on Saturday. It was really humid on Saturday, and I'm like, I hope, I was just thinking about everybody from the people to the pets and the farm animals. I was just thinking about that humidity and how it's affecting everybody.
Today, we're not going to escape it either.
It's still going to be something similar. It's going to be one of those humid and sticky days. Right now, we're starting at 18 in the city. Partly cloudy skies we're seeing. We can expect a mix of sun and clouds throughout the day. Now, there's a slight chance of showers this morning with a risk of thunderstorm later on. Just be advised, it's going to be breezy with the winds coming from the southwest. And we'll see our highs reach 28 today with with the humidity, it's going to be feeling like 33. So it's typically our highs for this time of the year is usually 21, but today we're going to be touching 28. And moving into the evening period, the skies will become partly cloudy. Then it's going to clear up as we get into the night period. And there's also a potential for thunderstorms early in the evening. Tomorrow, sort of sunny, but we're expecting increasing cloudiness as the afternoon progresses. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 18 degrees. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds, a slight chance we may see showers this morning, maybe even a thunderstorm. Otherwise, it's just going to be windy, and we'll be touching a high of 28.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
May McKillop, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Happy to be here.
You're happy to have you with us, filling in for Corey today. So anything up in traffic?
There's a couple things. There's a closure at northbound La Jamodier and westbound Regent, so that's closed today and tomorrow. As well, Jeff with a G called to say that there's a closure both directions on Logan between McPhillips and Arlington. So that's all today, but the lines are open, so if anyone wants to give us a call and give us an update on their commute, we'd love to hear from you.
Number is 788-3093. I gotcha.
Thank you.
I think when I get into my golden years, I'm just going to start randomly yelling out those numbers somewhere. That's what I'll remember. Because I had to remember them every day for so long. But it is 788-3093. If you have any update in traffic, by the way, you can pass it along to May, and she will pass it along to other commuters. Well, let's begin with some stories of grads. It is that time of year. Maybe you've been to a grad yourself. I needed a box of Kleenex last week at the Met School. I was laughing because I was crying for grads I didn't even know. I was just so sentimental as I heard their stories and achievements. They probably thought, who's that person in the middle of the room crying for everyone? Is she related to all of these grads? But it's hard to keep it together when you think about people's achievements, especially in the face of great adversity. So let's begin with two teens who arrived in Canada for the first time ever last year. They say their time in Winnipeg schools has led them to new opportunities. One of those teens is a Sudanese woman who was born in Egypt but went to school in Israel. Arfa Adam Katir went to Winnipeg Adult Education Centre to get her Canadian diploma. And CBC's Zabina Ahmed asked Katir about her $80,000 scholarship that she received to go on to post-secondary school at the University of British Columbia.
I think the school is amazing. It's just very unique. It's having very different people from very different backgrounds. I don't see it as regular high school, because in regular high school, everyone are coming from the same background, everyone are the same age, and everyone have the same goal of just graduating high school. But here, everyone have different goals. There is people that are just coming in that are more older than me, that just come in and it's the first time that they're doing high school, and they just want to finish to have the feeling of finishing high school. And there is some people that are just coming to here because they want to do post-secondary or just to improve the grades. So it's very unique because it's gathering everyone. I also very enjoyed being here. The teachers are amazing. I felt like every time that I needed help, someone helped me. And if they didn't know how to help me, they knew they knew a person that can help me, and they just told me to talk to them, or they connected us together. Also, before attending when I did the admissions in UBC, so I needed to do the English assessment, and I got a lot of help from this school. My English teacher really helped me of writing, of understanding the questions. Also, the librarian is found questions and printed the questions, examples, and it's very improved. Because I went twice. The first time it didn't go well because I didn't have help. But the second time, when I asked for the help, I succeeded the second time.
How do you feel about getting a scholarship and moving to UBC, University of British Columbia?
Actually, I was very surprised to get that. I didn't know that scholarship can get to that high amount. I thought it's something smaller. I applied to the scholarship when I applied to the university. It was in December, and I wrote an essay of my background story and everything, and it was just like, I was shocked to get it, to receive it. So my reaction to receiving that was, I don't know how to react. That's what I told her in the phone. It was very like helping, because now I know that I can go and study there and like have quiet mind about working at the same time. The scholarship is given to Black Canadian students that have high grades and that need like assistance with getting to UBC and everything.
How do you feel as a student, and now you're moving to UBC?
It's very like giving me energy to continue, giving me the power to know that, being my inspiration of myself, being like having the power that I know that if I did it once, I can do it again. And it's very, I'm proud of myself for doing that. Like also it's studying here, I'm studying English is my third language. So like doing my studies and getting high grades in my third language was also something that is very impressive.
That was Arfa Adam Katir, who went to Winnipeg Adult Education Centre to gain her Canadian diploma, and not only that, her scholarship, as she was discussing there with Zubina from CBC, Zubina Ahmed. Zubina also spoke with another student, a Ukrainian student who attended West Kildonan Collegiate after fleeing war in Ukraine last year. Valentin Slobodian made the move with his mother after their family business was destroyed during the war. Initially, when they came to Canada, they received some financial help and temporary housing from the Canadian government, but they're now working hard to support themselves.
School is so different from Ukrainian. I like this school much better because in Ukraine I used to live in a small town, so we used to have only one school all around the villages around the small town. So lots of students were coming from a neighborhood to this school, and it was not a high school. It's one school for first grade to 12th grade. So, and it's old. There are not so many technologies there. I'm not really a fan of Ukrainian education system. So moving here and having Canadian, the way of how teachers are teaching and how it's all happening here, it's a big difference from Ukraine, but I like this difference.
And what are your plans now in terms of future goals, like studying further?
I'm planning to study, getting Canadian education. I'm planning to go to University of Manitoba and study business in Asper School of Business.
And you've got the admission there already?
Yep.
How about your finances? How are you managing that?
So there are 3 people in my household, and we all are working for, I wouldn't say that it's now a minimum wage, but it's not even a middle class yet, but it's temporarily. And for now I'm working as a part-timer, so all money that I make, I try to save as much as possible, to save for a car, to save for education. And I think I will be fine with this, but it's not as easy as it can be.
How has it been managing both work and studies?
So first semester was harder than this one. I used to have 4 courses, and some of them were pretty hard that I was supposed to spend lots of time at home preparing for them. And even during my first semester, we were short on staff and work, so they were asking me to take lots of shifts. So I used to work around 27 hours a week. I'd say my emotional health wasn't as good as it's now. Now I'm working as same amount of hours during a week, but I used to, during this semester I used to have only 2 classes. It's pre-calculus and foods and nutrition. So I didn't spend lots of time for school, and I got some friends, so emotional health went up. If I want to become someone, I should work for it.
CBC's Zubina Ahmed speaking there with Valentin Slobodian and Arfa Adam Katir about their experiences moving to Canada and graduating. For more information on their stories and to read more, you can check out the story online at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
Well, how important is French in your life? 788-3205. We have a large population of French-speaking Manitobans. According to the latest census data from 2021, Manitoba has 36,740 people who have French as their first language, and then over 110,435 people are bilingual in this province. It's one of the largest populations outside of Quebec. But let's go to the history to learn more, because back in 1969, federal bilingualism was enshrined into law. Many Canadians embraced the vision of a bilingual country. They enrolled their kids in French immersion if they lived outside Quebec, and they learned French. The policy also supported French-speaking populations outside Quebec with services in French language. Well, there's a new poll out by Leger, which is the reason for us speaking about this morning. It was conducted for the Canadian Press. It says 43% of Canadians outside Quebec are committed to that bilingualism policy. In Quebec, it is 70%. For her thoughts, we have filmmaker Catherine Arnaud with us. She made an award-winning film called Just Watch Me, Trudeau in the 70s Generation, which explored Canada's experience of bilingualism. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what is your reaction to this poll?
Well, I was actually really heartened to see how much support for bilingualism there is, especially in Quebec, because I grew up under two referendums, and where the country was, basically there were passionate debates about whether Quebec would separate, and a real danger of that happening. So that was very heartening for me, and there was also fairly strong support across the country.
Yeah, people may not remember that moment. I mean, I lived through that moment of Jacques Parizeau and how close that vote came, and leaning into the television like, is Quebec going to separate from Canada? You made your film about bilingualism, I mentioned, several years ago. Can you share some of the big themes in it and how they resonate today?
Yes, the film came out in 1999, and it is a film that looked at the lives of 8 people who grew up under Pierre Trudeau's vision of bilingualism and how that impacted them. So it was a generation of people who came of age when bilingualism came into effect. And by the time they got to vote for Trudeau, he was gone, and we went through 2 referendums. So I was trying to look at how that personally impacted this generation, which I'm a part of. And what it really was a romantic film in many ways, because bilingualism was a romantic project. We went across the country. We learned, another language. If you were French-speaking, you often went and learned English. If you were English-speaking, you went and learned French. And so there was a great deal of cross-cultural mix.
What do you think the resonance is today? I'm curious, have you shown the film recently?
Well, it's hard to see the film now because the NFB hasn't renewed the music rights, but professors of history or Canadian culture often show the film on DVDs that they have stored away somewhere in the classroom. And for students today looking at it, it really is a historical film. I mean, the idea that these debates were passionately fought is fortunately a part of ancient history. And Canada now exists in a much more globalized world. Media is much more globalized. So the project that was bilingualism was a point in time, and I think now it's really taken for granted.
What are your thoughts on the legacy of the efforts to spread bilingualism?
I think they're wonderful. I mean, I suppose I would say that because I'm the beneficiary of that project. I got to go and study French in Chicoutimi for 6 weeks when I was in university, and that experience really shaped my life. And I know that many parents still want to put their kids in, French immersion schools. Francophones are much more respected, certainly, than they were historically. They're served by the government in their language. And, I think for many Canadians, learning another language has really broadened their perspective.
Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Catherine. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
That's Catherine Annal. She's a filmmaker. She produced a film for the National Film Board back in the 1990s called Just Watch Me, Trudeau in the 70s Generation. CBC reached out, by the way, to the Office of the Commissioner on Official Languages, and it said that this poll is inconsistent with its own surveys, which show strong support for bilingualism policy in Canada and across the country. So obviously their reaction to the poll was that there wasn't as much support as they expected, perhaps, although my guest saying she was happy to see what was reported there. Just to revisit the numbers, the new poll by Leger conducted for the Canadian Press says 43% of Canadians outside Quebec are committed to the bilingualism policy federally, and in Quebec that number is 70%. If you want to weigh in on your thoughts on bilingualism, we will take calls. 788-3205. What place does French have in your life? We have business news coming up here on CBC, and we're talking about more turbulence in the airline sector. Also, we're going to be talking about why Boeing could be criminally charged. We've been following the details of that story, so stay tuned. That is still ahead. Just a reminder, Louise Bridge is closed until June 28th. If you spot anything else in traffic that is urgent, please call us on the traffic line. May will pick it up at 788-3093. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to CBC's Information Radio in the morning show on your Monday. Hopefully you had an awesome weekend, and we'll revisit our regional forecast, or I guess it'll be our first visit to our regional forecast after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 18 degrees. Are you ready for a hot, sticky, windy Monday in Winnipeg? We're going to see the wind gusting to 50, a mix of sun and clouds. Today's high is 28, but the humidity will make it feel like 33. People in La Broquerie are in shock after a fatal train collision cast a shadow on yesterday's Saint Jean-Baptiste Day celebrations. Reeve Ivan Normando confirms one person has died. It happened as the town near Steinbach held its annual parade. Bob Tickner was on a float when he saw the train closing in on a crossing on the town's Principal Street.
All of a sudden, the brakes went on. We heard the squeal, and you could smell like the brakes. It's really sad that an event like this was spoiled by an incident like this.
RCMP expect to release more details later today. A Manitoba family says they are being discriminated against because they had their daughter through surrogacy in October. They do not qualify for maternity benefits. Tim Blazanovic says his wife can't get top-up benefits from her job at Pan Am Clinic. She met all the requirements for paid maternity leave under the collective agreement, except being able to provide a certificate of pregnancy and an expected due date.
We're just looking for equality because she pays the same union dues as all the other people who work for the province and all the other staff who get pregnant and have a child. We can't be the only ones that have done surrogacy. We can't be the only ones that think this is unfair. That's all we want is equality.
His wife currently is getting about a third of her wages through employment insurance, but the 17-week paid maternity leave would have bumped her up to 93%. The union filed a grievance with the employer, and a hearing is set for next month. Now, a law professor says there are lessons to be learned from this fight for maternity benefits. Bruce Curran specializes in labor and employment law at the University of Manitoba's Faculty of Law. He read the collective agreement and says different family structures should be taken into account in workplace agreements.
Any employer and union, but also the general public, should take this as an opportunity to perhaps rethink what are our standard kind of plans or how we typically handle these kinds of leaves.
Now, Blazanovic's union, CUPE, is at the bargaining table pushing for more progressive language when it comes to maternity leave for childbirth through surrogacy. Voters in the riding of Toronto-St. Paul's are casting their ballots today in a federal by-election.
I just think Trudeau needs to go. I think that most politicians who serve 2 terms should step down.
He should really seriously contemplate passing the baton at this point while there's still time.
A sample of voters as the polls are set to open this morning. Toronto St. Paul's is a Liberal stronghold, and the Liberals are expected to hold on to the seat. However, if the Conservatives pull off an upset or even make it close, most analysts agree the party will need to take a hard look at the future of their leader. Aid group Save the Children says the war in Gaza is taking a serious toll on the territory's children.
At least 17,000 children are estimated to be unaccompanied or separated from surviving family members, and at least 4,000 children are likely to be buried under the rubble. Children have made up about 40% of all deaths in Gaza.
Alexandra Sea, Save the Children's head of humanitarian policy. She says children who have been found in mass graves have not been identifiable because their injuries were so severe. As for the survivors, she says some children have been so traumatized they could not eat when food was in front of them, adding the effects of the war will impact children for several generations. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A refugee from Ukraine will soon have his graduation dreams realized. 18-year-old Valentin Slobodian moved to Winnipeg last year from war-torn Ukraine. This week, he graduates from West Kildonan Collegiate. His family's business was destroyed during Russia's full-scale invasion.
First day of a war was crazy, and I can say that lots of Ukrainians can relate to me. I woke up at 6 a.m. and we were hearing lots of bombing around the area.
Slobodian says he has been working 2 to 3 jobs to save money for his education, and he plans to continue. He's going to study at Asper School of Business. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on in this regional forecast. First, though, if people look at you, we'll pull this up. Kevin will get you up on YouTube. So did you guys, for Monday morning on purpose, position Grogu in the shot? Like, if people watch The Mandalorian, if you're a Star Wars fan, I think he might have moved now. We changed it.
No, he's still there.
Is he there?
He's still there. I came in and I saw him there.
Oh, we're zooming in on him.
Yeah, there he is. There he is. Still, just...
He's right in the shot. Now, for radio listeners who aren't Star Wars fans or don't watch The Mandalorian, this is Grogu, but you're going to call him Baby Yoda. That's what he looks like. I love that Kevin just zoomed in. Ooh, there he is.
Yeah, there he
I
is.
keep waiting for him to raise his arms. In this series, whenever something dramatic happens, he has the Force.
I think he does it when we're not watching.
That would be really creepy. I would never come back to work at CBC if that were going on. What is going on in the regional forecast?
We're still at 18 in the city. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds today with a chance of showers sometime this morning and some thunderstorms to go with that. The temperatures will climb to 28, though it's going to be feeling like 33 degrees due to the humidity that would come with that. And then for tonight, the skies will clear up and it's going to cool down a bit as you go to bed. But for now, it's 18 degrees and we're heading to 28. Heading west to Brandon, it is 19 and mostly cloudy. Today will bring a mix of sun and clouds with some showers or thunderstorm this morning, and you'd get to a high of 27. Expect continued breezy conditions to come with that also. Moving north to Thompson, 16 and partly cloudy at the moment. Today you should anticipate mainly cloudy conditions with showers possible and then becoming breezy later in the day. The high will be around 20. Churchill is currently 5 degrees at with light rain. Today expect cloudy skies with this scattered showers off and on and a chance of thunderstorms becoming breezy later in the day and would see a high of 10. Dauphin currently sunny at 14 degrees. You're going to be enjoying the mix of sun and clouds and a slight chance of morning showers with a risk of a thunderstorm to go with that. Temperatures will get to 27, though it's going to be feeling like 30 with the humidity. Now for Gimli, Steinbach and Morris, it's all going to be 18 degrees at the moment, and all hovering, the highs would be hovering between 27 and 28, though for that humidity, it's going to be getting to almost 38 for that part of the province. Right now, Winnipeg, it's 18, and we're heading to a high of 28.
Oh, super sticky.
It's going to be a sticky day, so prepare for that.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
May McKillop is in now to look at our commute, and we actually do have one major thing that they announced last week, and we got a call about it, right?
We did, yeah. We got a call about the Trans-Canada Highway being closed in Headingley, and that starts today and runs until Friday. So both westbound and eastbound lanes will be closed to traffic, and there's a detour in place. So people, the detour is in place, but we'll have to find an alternative route there. And that's until Friday as well. We have a bunch of closures in the city. So there's a closure in northbound Lagimodiere and westbound Regent. That's today and tomorrow. As well, a closure northbound and eastbound Logan McPhillips to Arlington. Thanks, Jeff with a G, for calling that in. As well as Inkster between Hutchings and Shepherd. There's a closure. And this morning, there's a collision northbound Main and McDermott. The middle lane is closed there. And both ways, Hugo, between Corden and McMillan are closed. So quite a few closures.
No kidding. Okay. Whoops, time of year, I guess. All right, thanks, May.
Okay, thanks so much.
So that's the list to this hour, which is 6:39 a.m. And if you want to call May, please do, 788-3093, with any updates on the spots we've mentioned or anything developing this morning. Well, let's get developments in news, business news specifically. Crystalie Ramlakan joins us via Zoom. Hi, Crystalie. So the first story you have this morning is about yet more turbulence, so to speak, in the airline sector. What's going on?
Yes, that's right. So more than 1,000 Bombardier aircraft assembly workers went on strike yesterday after their union and the company failed to reach an agreement. So Unifor says 1,350 employees stopped work at the company's aircraft manufacturing facility based at Toronto Pearson International Airport in Mississauga after the strike deadline expired at 11:59 p.m. on Saturday. And the plant manufactures plane exteriors. However, Bombardier says the assembly and completion of aircraft and delivery activities are based in Montreal and continue as normal. Now, the union says talks are set to resume early today, and Unifor says the bargaining committee is working towards an agreement, and both parties are committed to continuing the process. And a spokesperson for Bombardier says the collective goal is to swiftly reach a mutually beneficial agreement.
Let's stay with the airline industry for your next story. Why could Boeing now be criminally charged?
Well, Reuters is reporting that U.S. prosecutors are recommending criminal charges after finding the plane maker violated a settlement related to 2 fatal crashes. And the Justice Department must decide by July 7th whether to prosecute. So in May, officials determined the company breached a 2021 agreement that had shielded Boeing from criminal charges after 2 fatal crashes in 2018 and 2019 involving the 737 MAX jet. Now, under this deal, the Justice Department agreed not to prosecute over allegations Boeing defrauded the Federal Aviation Administration, as long as the company overhauled its compliance practices and submitted regular reports. And Boeing also agreed to pay $2.5 billion to settle the investigation. But it has maintained it honored the terms of the settlement. Now, these two sides are in discussions over a potential resolution to the investigation, so there is no guarantee that officials will move forward with charges. However, if the company does face criminal charges, it would certainly deepen an unfolding crisis at Boeing. It has faced intense scrutiny after a panel blew off one of its jets mid-flight in January. And relatives of the victims of the 2 fatal crashes have long criticized this 2021 agreement. So last week, the families pressed prosecutors to fine the plane maker nearly $25 billion and move forward with a criminal prosecution. And Marcy, at a Senate hearing this month, the Boeing chief executive even acknowledged the company's shortcomings on safety and apologized to the families who lost loved ones.
Let's end with a story that has a much different texture and switch gears here. Why is one ringtone and alarm sound from Apple facing so much controversy, and what is it?
Okay, well, some people believe this jaunty, cheerful tune called By the Seaside is an ongoing, easygoing melody that can make waking up a peaceful experience, but others think it sounds more like a horror movie featuring a clown. So some say it's part of a phenomenon where people get an uneasy feeling toward lifelike, but not quite human things like robots, dolls, or even clowns. So have a listen, see what you think. Okay, so what do you think?
Honestly, okay, I'm going to tell you exactly what I first came to mind. I once took a cruise. There was a jazz cruise on the QE2, which is a very historic vessel, all across the ocean. And we were in lounges during the daytime where they would have like really groovy carpet and like everybody was dressed to the nines and they had a band going and that is exactly the kind of tunage that would go there. I found it kind of chill. I don't know, but our team's weighing in. So we undisclosed, the identity shall go undisclosed. Someone on our team has that ringtone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have our other ones queued up to play. But tell us more about the controversy before. Let's get into the story.
Yeah, well, you know what? In the past, of course, phones had only a few sounds. When we had landlines, just about one sound. But now with this large choice, people can certainly express themselves. And of course, people have been trying to use sound to wake up for centuries, relying on everything from church bells to roosters. But the alarm clock has evolved to a lot of us just using our phones. And Marcy, this jingle is so controversial, it even spawned rumors that Adele wrote it. But an online content creator confirmed he started the rumor and it's not true. He said he thought Adele would find the joke funny.
If I were the creator of like this ringtone, or if I had anything to do with it, I would reach out to Adele and make it like I would hard press to get a response from her. Yeah. Yes. Abby, your ringtone, you got it queued? What do you
This
use?
is going to blow your mind. I promise you that.
Oh, no. Okay. In a good way?
Yes.
Okay, hold up that phone. We had a lot of stories about phones in the show today, actually, while Abby's queuing it.
Oh, come on.
It'll happen, don't worry.
Let's do it now.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hang on. This is mine.
Oh, go ahead with yours.
Well, this is
You
apparently
first.
I never use mine because when it started, I'm like, I don't ever wake up to this one, but see, it's like chill, but then it cuts off. That's it. That's all I got for you. Crystalia, is yours happy? Jaunty, do you have a custom ringtone? What's yours like? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Or you don't have to share because I'm outing everyone.
There is a call for you.
No, it's fine. I have a ringtone that people find very annoying. I have the
I know what you're talking about. You don't even have to play it on the radio. It's good. Abby's got his.
Exactly.
It sounds like a strange voice from afar. Okay, go ahead, Abby.
Incoming call. I put it on screen. There is a call for you. Do you wish to ignore? This call might be important. I've pushed the call to voicemail. Sorry to have disturbed you. Incoming call. I put it on screen.
Okay, I want to say Batman, but I'm going to be wrong. Am I wrong? I have the wrong hero.
That's Jarvis. Iron Man's Jarvis.
Iron Man! Oh, see, I was between Batman and Iron Man, and I got the wrong assistant. I love that. All right, we're on a complete crazy tangent now. What's going on in markets? Crystalia Ramlakan.
In Europe, stocks are higher as investors look ahead to fresh economic data and interest rate decisions from the region. So Germany, the UK, and France is all up. In Asia, markets are slipping. Japan is up. Shanghai and Hong Kong are both down. Oil is up at 32 cents to 81.04 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up for $11 to $2,326.08 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.07 of a cent to 73.1 cents U.S.
All right. Thank you, Crystalia. Take care.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. You too.
Crystalia Ramlakan with business news. Now, I mentioned we have a lot of phone stories in the show, and that is because in the next hour of information radio, we're going to talk about something people are now calling quote-unquote dumb phones. There's a growing movement in Canada to ditch your smartphone and buy a flip phone, going back old school, with only talk and maybe text features instead. We're going to talk to CBC reporter Nisha Patel in the next hour. Right
you ready
now.
to share your music with the world? CBC Music's Searchlight contest is on, looking for Canada's next breakthrough musical act. This could be your time to shine. Enter an original song for a chance to launch your music career and win some great prizes, including an industry showcase, a distribution deal, and musical instruments. Get ready to take it to the next level. CBC Music Searchlight 2024. Enter now at cbc.ca/searchlight.
I'm just laughing about when we were trying to cue our phones up to play you our ringtones. How come your phone will always ring on demand when you don't want it to, and then when you're looking to make a sound out of your phone, you can never figure it out? I have that problem with my volume all the time. Maybe I should get a quote-unquote dumb phone and go back to that. 18 degrees in Winnipeg right now. It's also 18 in Brandon. It's 16 in Thompson, and it's mostly cloudy in all of those centers and really sticky. It's going to be hot today, a high today in Winnipeg of 28 degrees with Humidex 33. It's going to be windy, though. Wind southwest 30 to 50. And just looking around at your provincial conditions, the cold spot right now is Churchill at 6 degrees. Morden is your hot spot at 22 degrees right now. And we have already had some early morning rain in parts of the north, but right now it looks like nowhere is getting rain in Manitoba. Well, next on the show, a lot of people rely on social media for their mental health information, but that information may be both misleading and polarizing. So how do you spot that and how do you counter that? That's our topic of our mental health column today with Mark Hennick.
Good morning, Marcy.
So can you define what we're talking about here? What do you mean by mental health misinformation?
Well, we've heard a lot about misinformation in general these last few years. I think it's become a bit of a buzzword. So I wanted to understand what exactly this means, and I spoke with Professor Sander van der Linden about this. Van der Linden is a professor of social psychology at the University of Cambridge, and his new book on misinformation is called Foolproof.
We define misinformation, and at least in a recent consensus report with the American Psychological Association, as information that's either false or misleading in some other way. And in fact, there's an important distinction because stuff that's totally fabricated is not as prevalent as content that is generally misleading because it uses a manipulation or other dubious technique to try to influence people in some way. And so misinformation can be both. It can be either false or, contain some nugget of truth, but otherwise misleading. And often that's the more dangerous kind of misinformation.
Now, I think this concept has actually been always very active in the mental health space specifically, both in the form of stigma against mental illnesses and in terms of some of the politics around research and treatment. So mental health misinformation then is typically contains misinformed ideas or assertions about your psychological well-being. And they're ideas that are either not rooted in truth at all, or they overgeneralize or decontextualize a piece of factual information about mental health. And they usually do that in order to assimilate it into another narrative, very often one that serves or seeks to serve an ulterior motive.
In the first place, how does health and misinformation get generated?
Well, in my view, a charitable one, admittedly, is that the majority of mental health misinformation is probably reactive in nature. I think it's often rooted in fear, which then triggers a system of self-reinforcing beliefs. And they can be about mental health in general, about specific people with specific mental health problems. They can even be about yourself, your own experiences in this area. Take one salient example is the common belief that the mentally ill are violent. Now, listen to what I just did there. It was something subtle that I did intentionally to illustrate a point. Red flag number 1, the mentally ill. That means that I reduce the vast majority of the global population who will at some point experience a mental health problem or illness into a singular, homogeneous group. And I did it with one word, the. Red flag number 2. Mentally ill in the implied singular. Sometimes you'll hear people say that person has mental illness, again in the singular. There are more than 150 formally classified individual mental illnesses in the DSM-5 alone. They cover a vast, diverse array of human experiences that differ wildly in terms of their impact on human cognition and behavior. So that, again, is a reduction to absurdity. Red flag number 3. I said are violent. That immediately triggers an emotional reaction, emotional reasoning, because the majority of media portrayals of mental illness are still that of extreme violence toward others. Again, that's out of touch with the empirical reality because the vast majority of cases of mental health problems and illnesses are not predictive of violence at all. So you can see just in how that one little line, often set off the cuff, but likely rooted in an unconscious fear, can perpetuate mental health misinformation. The good news there, though, is that we can learn to break it down just like that and think and speak more mindfully if we choose not to close our minds to changing our ideas.
Okay, what are basic things that we should look out for if we're watching for misinformation around mental health?
So some of the tools that I just used right there, some people may have noticed, include thinking about logical fallacies and cognitive biases, because these are very often present in pieces of misinformation. Logical fallacies can include things like appeal to authority, assuming that somebody knows what they're talking about just because they have, the mantle of authority, or ad hominem attacks. Sometimes, very often, actually, in academia, people will get attacked as people rather than about the research or the data that they're trying to communicate. Or another logical fallacy that Professor van der Linden identified as often being at play here is called illusory truth.
Illusory truth happens when you're exposed to repeated statements that are not necessarily accurate. So the more often you repeat a lie, the more persuasive it sounds to people because the brain mistakes fluency for accuracy. And so basically what happens is that if your brain is faster at processing a claim because you've heard it before, it's more likely to assign it some sort of credibility factor because you're processing it faster because it feels familiar.
Now, I also mentioned cognitive biases. These can be helpful in thinking about our own thinking. Confirmation bias comes up a lot in mental health misinformation. That's where people seek out information that confirms what they already believe. Or emotional reasoning leads us to think that something's true just because it feels true. When considering our own assumptions or assertions or those of others that are about mental health, we really have to pause, reflect, and ask ourselves, interrogate the piece of information. Am I thinking about this in a black and white sort of way? That's another cognitive bias. If someone can't even entertain the idea of a middle ground about a belief around mental health, then that's a red flag too. That's something to look out for.
Before you go this morning, what are the ways to counter the misinformation? Not just to spot it, but to counter it?
Yeah, Dr. van der Linden has helped to popularize the idea of psychologically inoculating against or pre-bunking misinformation.
Pre-bunking has the advantage of not having to come in after people have already adopted or internalized some of these beliefs, right? And so the advantage there is that you can choose the frame in a sense that, you can warn people in advance, you can break it down for them. And you can do that in a non-political and a non-threatening way. And that allows people to form, potentially more evidence and accurate beliefs and become more resistant to adopting misinformation in the first place.
And in the case of mental health, this could look like better public health messaging. It can mean greater media literacy, better understanding of the scientific method. Real-life science rarely deals in certainties. Good science is a conversation. It still has beliefs and assumptions, but those ideally change over time as new information presents itself. And so can you. So be open and honest about your feelings. Don't believe everything you think. And in good faith, question everything.
Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Hennick is the author of So-Called Normal, a memoir of family depression and resilience. He is also our mental health columnist here on Information Radio. It is right now 4 minutes to 7 o'clock. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got sports coming up at 7:25. I watched that hockey game Friday night. I could not turn away. I think a lot of people are going to be watching tonight all over Canada. I was passing on the weekend different spots that had billboards up already advertising how they were going to watch Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. Exciting stuff, especially for the folks in the city of Edmonton. So that's going to be fun to talk about with sports at 7:25. Stay with us. Tell you a bit more about what's coming up in the next hour in a moment. Right now, though, let's turn our attention to the news. Heather Wells is in with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, we expect to learn more from RCMP today about a deadly train collision in La Broquerie yesterday. People are in shock after the incident in the middle of the town's Saint Jean-Baptiste Day celebrations. The reeve there, Ivan Normando, confirms one person has died. A Manitoba family says they are being discriminated against because they had their daughter through surrogacy. They don't qualify for maternity benefits. Tim Blazanovic says his wife can't get top-up benefits from her job at Pan Am Clinic. She met all the requirements for paid maternity leave under the union's collective agreement, except being able to provide a certificate of pregnancy and her estimated due date. He says all they want is equal treatment. We'll hear their story in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, the forecast, 18 degrees, mostly cloudy in Winnipeg. And for the day, a chance of showers early this morning, a risk of a thunderstorm as well. And you'll feel it. It's that sticky, warm weather where you think that something's going to change here. But a high of 28, humidex 33, and winds will be southwest 30 to 50. But again, right now it's 18 degrees. By the way, winds right now are a little breezy as well. Winds are southeast at 35. Or the wind is a little breezy, I should say. In the next hour of Information Radio, we are going to be looking at the flip phone, which is making a comeback. A growing number of Canadians are tossing out their smartphones in favor of something simpler that's now being called a dumb phone. I don't know if I like that title. But are you tempted to do it? A lot of people are reporting that their mental health, speaking of which, and their attention spans have all improved, going back to these old school phones. So to break down the trend, we'll have a discussion with CBC reporter Nisha Patel in the next hour of the show. Well, speaking of stats, the unemployment rate for young people is the highest it's been since 2016, according to Stats Can. Coming up, we'll talk to an organization that's trying to help high school kids in Manitoba figure out their career paths this summer. And I left traffic to the top of the clock here because there's a big one this morning. So Highway 1 in Headingley, just west of Highway 334, is closed. So this is going to be in effect till June 28th. The province putting out a special report just started this morning, and you'll need to use detours which are marked through the area as you're moving through. In addition, the Louise Bridge in Winnipeg, also a big closure. It is closed until the end of the week. Call us if you see anything urgent on your morning commute, please. 788-3093.
Today on The Current.
She just wanted to die with dignity.
A Vancouver woman was forced to move to get access to medical assistance in dying because the hospital where she was staying bans the procedure. Now her family is suing, saying public hospitals shouldn't be able to opt out. It's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. It is a federal by-election that some see as a referendum on the Trudeau government. Today, people in the riding of Toronto-St. Paul's go to the polls. They're voting to replace outgoing Liberal MP Carolyn Bennett. As JP Tasker tells us, a Liberal victory is not certain this time round.
I just think Trudeau needs to go.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is not on the ballot in Toronto-St. Paul's, but it's his name that's on voters' minds.
I think that most politicians who've served 2 terms should step down.
He should really seriously contemplate passing the baton at this point while there's still time.
The Liberals have held this wealthy urban riding for more than 30 years, but polls suggest the Conservatives have a 15-point lead in Ontario. Could that be enough to deliver an upset victory?
All of those metrics point to a deep and broad desire for change that extends into a city like Toronto.
Pollster David Coletto is expecting a narrow Liberal win, but he says the Conservatives have some momentum.
Liberals aren't all that enthusiastic right now about Mr. Trudeau, about the government, and Conservatives are deeply motivated to get out and vote.
In a sign of just how important this race is, more than a dozen cabinet ministers have dropped into the riding to shore up Liberal support, including heavy hitters like Trudeau's deputy, Chrystia Freeland.
We are taking nothing for granted.
She's confident Liberal candidate Leslie Church can hang on to the seat.
Leslie is working her heart out, and the whole team is there with her. And we're just going to keep on working until the last minute.
Justin Trudeau has said he's not going anywhere, but a poor showing in today's by-election could lead to calls for a new leadership. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
Save the Children says nearly 21,000 children are missing in Gaza. It says as many as 4,000 of those children may be trapped under rubble. Alexandria Saya is the charity's head of humanitarian policy and advocacy.
We know also that an unknown number of children have been detained by Israeli forces, have been forcibly transferred out of Gaza, and are buried in unmarked graves.
Save the Children's report says at least 33 Israeli children have been killed since October, and an unconfirmed number of children are being held captive in Gaza. At least 19 people have been killed in a series of attacks in the southern Russian Republic of Dagestan. In a daytime shooting, gunmen killed police and shot at places of worship in 2 cities in the region. 15 officers and an Orthodox priest are among the dead. Freelance reporter Anna Cunningham is following the latest.
Authorities say gunmen armed with automatic weapons opened fire at an Orthodox church and a synagogue in Derbent. The city is home to an ancient Jewish community and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Dagestan, in Russia's North Caucasus region. Smoke could be seen rising from the synagogue. At the same time, 125 kilometres away in Dagestan's capital, Mahachkala, gunmen attacked traffic police with reports of heavy gunfire around the city's cathedral. Both attacks took place on the Orthodox festival of Pentecost. The governor of Dagestan, Sergei Melyakov, said it had become a day of tragedy for Dagestan. A number of police officers, a priest and civilians were reportedly killed, as well as at least 6 gunmen. They have not been identified, but authorities say they know who is behind these attacks. In the past, Dagestan has seen Islamist attacks, and in the 2000s, the region was hit by an Islamist insurgency spilling over from neighbouring Chechnya. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Buckingham Palace says Princess Anne has been injured. The 73-year-old has minor injuries and a concussion. It happened on her Gatcombe Park estate yesterday. The palace says she is in hospital as a precaution and she's expected to make a full and swift recovery. The princess was going to fly to Canada later this week, but Buckingham Palace now says her engagements for the next week are postponed. For a 5th day, the people of Churchill Falls are out of their homes. A wildfire is still burning close to their town in central Labrador. It's home to a massive hydroelectric plant that provides power to Newfoundland and Labrador as well as Quebec. Kayla Hounsell has the latest from Happy Valley Goose Bay.
Water bombers that had come to help Labrador from Quebec heading home to fight their own fires. 2 more from Saskatchewan will be in the air today. The fire is burning out of control within 7 kilometers of Churchill Falls, but there is still a river separating the fire from the town. Crews are now removing vegetation that could be a source of fuel in case the flames jump the river. Still too tense for any timeline on sending evacuees home, says Premier Andrew Furey.
Whatever we try to predict today, the only thing certain about that prediction would be it would probably be wrong.
Paula Brinson is one of more than 700 people now out of their homes for 5 days.
When we get there, we get there. We just got to keep that faith that we are going to get there.
Churchill Falls is a true company town. It exists to power the massive hydroelectric plant that provides electricity to parts of Newfoundland and Labrador and Quebec. Jennifer Williams, CEO of Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, says a handful of people have stayed behind to run it for now.
It is status quo, but it is not an easy status quo. They're a small skeleton group that are doing this work, but they are doing it, and they're doing it with pride, and they're doing it with professionalism.
It is still warm and dry in Churchill Falls today, with no significant rain in the forecast. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.
Canadian businesses are filling a lot of jobs with temporary foreign workers. CBC News has analyzed numbers provided by the federal government. Business reporter Paula DeHatchek tells us they show a dramatic jump in the use of temporary foreign workers in the last few years.
We still have some of these operators that are struggling with the amount of hours that they can open.
Restaurants Canada CEO Kelly Higginson says staffing shortages are a problem, and sometimes the only answer is temporary foreign workers, especially in remote areas.
So there is a challenge in some of these communities from a population density perspective and with aging populations.
The restaurant industry isn't alone. Last year, employers were cleared to hire around 240,000 temporary foreign workers, roughly the population of Regina. That's more than twice as many TFWs as they did 5 years ago. CBC's analysis shows major increases across a wide variety of jobs, from cleaners and cashiers to administrative assistants and construction workers.
It isn't a surprise to me
given the employer appetite for this program.
University of Waterloo economics professor Mikhail Skuterud says employers like hiring TFWs because they can't easily quit. But he thinks if businesses can't find workers locally, they should offer more money.
All we hear about are labor shortages. So we have to begin to recognize that this really is a self-serving narrative, mostly coming from corporate Canada.
CBC requested an interview with Employment and Social Development Canada, but it was declined. In a statement, a spokesperson said the TFW program makes up a small fraction of the workforce, and while the department loosened hiring restrictions in the wake of the pandemic, the labor market has changed, and now Ottawa is beginning to tighten them up again. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
Edmonton Oilers fans will be packing bars and watch parties tonight. Game 7 of the NHL final happens in Florida. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, their team could bring the Stanley Cup home. Madeline Smith tells us how the city is preparing.
A sea of blue and orange will wash over the fan zone outside Rogers Place tonight. With Game 7 back in Florida, the watch party inside Edmonton's arena is sold out, and bars across the city will be full. Fans hoping to see the Oilers pull off a win from a 3-game deficit, last done in 1942 by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Brooke Sprosen works at a local pub.
We have people ringing the phone 24/7 trying to get reservations, which we aren't taking for the games.
Other Edmonton bars were fully booked weeks in advance, well before anyone knew Game 7 would even happen. The Canadian Ice House in the heart of downtown has room for almost 900 people. General Manager Tian Anderson.
Edmonton is it's so electric, and I really think it's something I've never seen in my life before.
It's been 34 years since the Oilers won a Stanley Cup. The last deep playoff run in 2006 ended in heartbreak with a Game 7 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. Preparing for the crush of people at his sports bar, Chase Narabeski says hopes are high for a different outcome this year.
Truly being in that moment is going to be so special for everybody.
The puck drops after 8 p.m. Eastern Time, but hockey fans will be lining up for the party well before that. Madeline Smith, CBC News, Edmonton.
At cbc.ca/sports/hockey, everything you ever wanted to know about the Oilers on the eve of Game 7. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Joining us on Information Radio. This is CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This hour on our show, we're going to be talking about jobs. Jobs for young people. The unemployment rate for young people is the highest it's been since 2016 outside of the COVID years. Now, that is according to Statistics Canada. We're going to talk to an organization this half hour that's trying to help some high school kids in Manitoba figure out their career paths this summer. So stay tuned. We'll tell you all about what that interview is going to be about. In addition, all of a sudden you're cool again. Did you keep your flip phone? Did you never get rid of it? Is that the only phone you ever had? Well, apparently people are going back to the flip phone. They're calling them quote unquote dumb phones to play against the idea of a smartphone. There's a growing movement in Canada to ditch the smartphone, buy a flip phone, and only have talk and text. And we're going to hear why. So that is just ahead of 8 o'clock this morning, that conversation. Right now to more serious matters. Heather Wells is in with developing news in Manitoba. Good morning. And I think she's just probably joining us. It's always hazards of 7 o'clock. They're catching up in the news center on what's going on. They're getting off the phones and doing their daily checks. So I'm going to try again before moving to traffic. Heather, are you with us? Yeah, she's just tied up with something. All right, well, let's get ourselves into the forecast then. Abby and I have been talking about how sticky it is, and it's going to be really humid throughout today, Abby.
Yes, it's going to be another humid day. 19 currently in Winnipeg and partly cloudy. A hot day. We're looking at a mix of sun and clouds for today and a very slight chance of showers this morning. There's also a risk of thunderstorm and it will be breezy with the winds coming from the southwest. Expect a high of 28. Tonight, it's going to be partly cloudy, becoming clear late in the evening. And also, we still have that risk of thunderstorms staying with us till the early part of the evening. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 19. It's going to be a mix of sun and clouds for the day. A very slight chance we may see showers this morning and a risk of thunderstorm. And we are heading to a high of 28.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, let's go to traffic and then we'll get our headlines on the air here. What's happening, May McKillop?
Well, let's start with the big closure. So there's construction on Highway number 1 in Headingley around the train tracks. There's a detour set up, but the section of the highway is closed from starting today until Friday, so expect delays. Also here in the city, we have a closure on Inkster between Hutchings and Shepherd. And northbound Main and McDermott, there's a collision this morning, so that leaves the first middle lane is closed. As well, both ways between on Hugo between Corridon and Macmillan is closed, and there's a closure northbound Lachaudière and westbound Regent, and that is today and tomorrow. So that's everything for traffic so far this morning. If anyone else is seeing anything, they can give our commuter line a call. The phone number is 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, May.
Thanks.
May's filling in for Corey Funk this morning. And now Heather Wells has joined us from the busy news center, I believe, with our headlines. Hi, Heath.
Good morning. Well, difficult time in La Broquerie. People there are in shock after a fatal train collision cast a shadow on yesterday's Saint Jean-Baptiste Day celebrations. Reeve Ivan Normando confirms one person has died. It happened just as the town near Steinbach was holding its annual parade. We expect to learn more from RCMP later today. A teen who arrived in Canada last year says her time in a Winnipeg school has been life-changing. 19-year-old Arfa Adam Katir studied in Israel after her parents fled Sudan's civil war. She's going to graduate this week from the Winnipeg Adult Education Center, and she credits that school for putting her on the path to university. We'll hear from her in our next local news at 7:30.
Well, it is grad season, and one of the questions that comes up repeatedly, not just when you're in grade 12, but it starts early, is what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do after grad? That question can be intimidating if you're a teenager, and it can feel worse if you get ready to leave high school and you're still not sure, but it's perfectly normal not to be able to answer that question right now. A nonprofit organization is trying to alleviate all the worry for young people as we head into summer. Career Trek is hosting a summer camp to get high school students hands-on experience in various career fields. According to Statistics Canada, just by the numbers, the unemployment rate among young people has gone up in the past year. So as I mentioned off the top of the hour here, from April 2023 to April of this year, the unemployment rate among youth aged 15 to 24 increased 2.9% to 12.8%. Now, that is the highest unemployment rate for youth since July 2016. So you've got to go back 8 years, excluding those pandemic years, which were unusual. Rhonda Taylor's in studio, CEO of Career Trek. Thanks for being here.
For having me.
So when you hear the numbers about unemployment, just to start with that, among young people, what's going through your mind?
I feel worry for them because it can be a really hard question to answer, like you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And some kids do really struggle to answer that because they don't know. It's hard to understand, the possibilities that exist, or maybe you have an idea because, you've got an adult in your life that is working in a particular field, but you don't know enough about how to get there, or is that really for me?
So tell us more about the summer camps and what teens can take away from them, and obviously in helping explore some of what we're talking about.
Yeah, we look to provide experiential career education programming for children and youth. And this summer, we're focusing on 3 sectors in Manitoba where, again, we're sort of reading and having conversations around gaps in the labor market. And so this summer, students in grades 9 to 12 will have a chance to explore trades or careers in the trades, in film and entertainment, and in tourism and hospitality. And really what we're doing in those camps is giving them a chance to see the number of different career options that exist, 1. And then 2, our programming is experiential by design. So they actually get to try the career a little bit. And then the third piece, actually, there's 4 pieces. The third piece is helping them understand the pathway. So when I graduate high school, if I want to pursue a career in the trades or as a radio announcer, where do I go? What do I have to do next? So we talk to them about those lifelong learning pathways. And then the final component of that is that we're also trying to connect young people to industry. So if they do pursue a particular pathway, where do you get a job? And so we partner with industry and they'll host us for tours, or people will come in as guest speakers to talk about what exists in different sectors.
It's interesting that those 3 are highlighted: trades, film and entertainment, and tourism and hospitality. I was just thinking about when you think about something like film and entertainment, if you just go surface level and someone says, I don't want to be an actor or I don't want to be involved in a production like in that big way, in that front-facing way, there's so many jobs, right, that are behind the scenes and part of a team, or maybe you're the leader of the whole thing, but you're never on camera. Maybe you're the producer.
You don't want to.
Yeah, but I think a lot, is that what you're talking about when you're thinking about the multi-layer, and just, often teens will say that's not for me without even knowing what they could explore.
100%. And that's really what we're trying to get at too, is some of those myths about certain industries as well. Like you say, the film and entertainment, right away, youth do think actor or on film, but we want to talk to them about the storyboard artists or the journalists or the writers or the costume designers or the tradespeople, because there's tradespeople that are building sets and things like that, or the producers. I mean, when I look around where I'm sitting, there's a whole bunch of people that are making this work. And we want them to understand that.
I always say people hear me daily, but it is a huge team game.
Yeah.
You don't sit here without an entire team of people doing work together.
Absolutely. So
I know you've spoken with employers about what they're looking for as well from new hires. So what kinds of things have they told you about what they're looking for, and also what they're hoping you could help strengthen teens with?
Sure, absolutely. So of course, industries have their own technical knowledge, right? Depending on who they are and what they do. But what we're hearing more and more of is that employers are looking for new hires to come with some of those skills related to employability. So that's the communication skills, the problem solving, the teamwork, the collaboration, the critical or creative thinking. I hear time and time again that many employers just don't have the time to teach those things because they need folks getting at the technical side of the work. And so when I hear that, it's like, okay, well, what then can Career Check also do to help develop some of those skills? So within our programming, because we're recruiting students from different schools, different neighborhoods, different communities, we're already putting them in a situation where they don't know everybody. So they've got to take the time to learn to get to know one another. We build in team building activities so that we can help them kind of break the ice, because that can be a little nerve-wracking sometimes. But some of our career lessons require them to work together. They have to come up with a plan. They have to get to an end result. So those teamwork and collaboration aspects are being built in. And then sometimes, the activity related to our career doesn't always work out. So instead of just saying, oh, well, that didn't work out, we're actually doing a reflection and getting them to answer questions like, okay, well, what do you think happened? Or what would you do differently if you were going to do it over again?
Which is super smart, because then that can help somebody identify their skills.
Absolutely.
Like, none of this is failure. This is not a fit for me, maybe. There's so many careers.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can be explored.
And what's interesting, again, through the reflection, of course, we like to hear what kids like about our program or what they like about a particular career. But I find it just as important to hear what students in our programs don't like about a particular career. And that's important information. Cross it off the list.
How important is it that none of us look at teens or young people through the lens of our own generations, because things have so drastically changed? I mean, I'll give you an example from my own life where I was quite surprised that a teenager in my life, who was otherwise quite confident and interactive and with all kinds of, in different ways, really was nervous about even ordering food out in public, like didn't want to talk to the stranger behind the till or the person in the, and I was trying to encourage this person, like to interact with people. And I thought, well, that seems to be, I'm thinking most of her interaction would have come in other ways. Yeah. So, but I thought it was so important for me in that moment not to say, what's wrong? Come on, just talk to this person. Yeah. That seems to be also a skill that might be critical in job search, and to be able to strengthen in young people. How, and you said part of it will come from teamwork, but is that sort of something that you see, among generationally?
I do. There is a bit of a hesitancy, right, to interact, in a face-to-face way. And it is actually part of the reason we really want to engage industry and business in our programming as well. I think of my career and where I've landed and that sort of catchphrase of the power of your network, right? And so if we can help young people connect to others outside of their immediate social circles or their friend groups to give them a chance to practice those things that you've just identified, right? Sometimes we prep them with some questions that they can ask, but the prep is to get them to just ask the question out loud. So that they get used to having a conversation with a stranger, inquiring to be able to get more information, or like you said, just to place an order. And there is a bit of a disconnect there. So our industry and business partners play a huge role in that network development.
How long have you been doing these programs?
CareerTrack's been around since 1996, and I've been with the organization for 5 years now. So we've navigated a global pandemic, which meant we had to do our programming online and virtually, but now we're back in person, and we're really finding it's a great way to connect and build relationships with young people.
How big is the pool of employers that you work with? And when you say they are directly involved, would they come and do speaking to the students, or would the students actually go and do like practicum in their workplaces?
Not so much practicum, but my preference is that our industry partners will host us on site, so that young people can actually see what a place of employment looks like, feels like. Are there people here that look like me? And then we get folks that are working in those different industries to come and talk about their own career journeys. Again, so young people understand it's not linear in any way. It's not A to B to C. It's like, I didn't even know I was going to end up in this sector, right? And then they kind of backtrack and talk about all the different, zigs and zags that their career's taken.
So I want to make sure we leave time here for registration. So can people still register, and where do they get more info?
Yeah, for sure. So our youth programming registration is still open, and they can contact our manager of youth initiatives, Taylor Bowman Robinson, at tbowmanrobinson@careertrack.ca, or they can phone our office number at 204-944-1800.
204-944-1800. Perfect. On a personal note, I heard you got one graduating this week.
I do. My daughter is graduating grade 12 this week from College Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So shout out to Lexi Taylor. Congratulations, honey. I'm really proud of you.
This is the week where everybody gets asked that. If you've got a grad in your life, I'm going to shout it out on the air. Congratulations to you, and thanks for the work you're doing with the next generation. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Marcy.
That's Rhonda Taylor, the CEO of CareerTrack. And as she mentioned, you can look for more information about the camps and registration and details overall at CareerTrack. That's TREK, careertrack.ca.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world, staying on top of stories around the globe, and connected close to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
All right, let's go. Morning sports. I'm so excited about this hockey game. I wish it were already tonight, Scott Regar. I'm good to go. I watched Friday. I loved every minute of it. I thought it was awesome.
Oh.
And oh my gosh, I don't even want to talk about it in some ways. So you just talk. I'll shut up.
Okay, well, it's my job. I will do that. And I'm with you, right? Connor McDavid, Friday night, they win 5-1 at home with all those fans. And McDavid didn't even have a shot on goal. No points, nothing. And they still won that way. But I expect tonight, Marcy, the brightest of stars in Game 7 will shine. Earlier in this series, if I was talking about brightest of stars, it would have either been Bobrovsky or Barkov from Florida. But McDavid, just unbelievable in these last 3 wins. All told now, he has more playoff points than anybody before him, not named Lemieux or Gretzky. The table is set, and Connor was asked his thoughts ahead of this game he's been dreaming about since he was a little kid.
You got to prepare just like you always do. Obviously it's not your ordinary game. Everybody understands that, but you got to make it as ordinary as possible in your head. Part of that is just sticking to your routine. The group has, played some of our best hockey over the course of the last 7-8 days. So we feel good about where things are at. But with that being said, it comes down to one game.
How calm does he sound ahead of this massive, massive game, a game with historical possibilities? The Oilers looking to become just the 5th team ever, Marcy, to win any playoff series after falling in the first 3 games, and looking to become just the 2nd squad to win the Cup that way. The last to do it, the Leafs, 82 years ago. And if that's not tantalizing enough, there's always the fact they can become, the Oilers, the first Canadian team since Kim Campbell was Prime Minister to claim the Cup tonight, 7 o'clock on CBC. You can tune in.
Just keep doing what you're doing. That's my only advice. It's pretty straight ahead, right?
Man. Do you want to hear something else weird?
Okay, tell me.
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, longest tenured Oiler, has gone through all the low points and now some of the high points. He was drafted 13 years ago today. Ooh. Is that lucky or unlucky? 13?
It's lucky. It's all lucky.
Absolutely, and I'm touching wood just in case it's not.
To a less fun story now. We got to switch gears here. A new low point for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, Toronto fell yesterday to Cleveland, meaning the Jays have been swept in their last 2 series, Marcy, and adding injury to insult, or insult to injury, was news yesterday that Toronto's top prospect has been suspended for 80 games for using performance-enhancing drugs. Orelvis Martinez says he unknowingly took the banned substance as part of a fertility treatment. Here's his manager, John Schneider.
He's obviously, humbled, and you guys saw his statement and knows that he made a mistake. And we're gonna support him through it. So, surprised at the conversation for sure, and the fact that he's taking responsibility for it, I think, is a good first step.
So without their top prospect, the AL East basement-dwelling Jays take on Boston tonight. The Red Sox swept them just last week in TO, so we'll see what gives at Fenway this evening.
And finishing with footy, whose fortunes are on the rise at the European Championship?
The class of the tournament so far, Marcy, have been the Iberian side. Spain and Portugal lead their groups. They're the only teams left in the tournament that have not lost or drawn a game. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, the Scots, an abysmal performance yesterday as they lost in the last second to Hungary, and they're already eliminated from the tournament. We can, some of us anyway, switch our attention then to the Copa America. Tomorrow it's Canada and Peru playing, and I know Canadian captain Alphonso Davies is going to be, hopefully rested for that game because he is from Edmonton. He is a big Oilers fan and a good friend of McDavid and Draisaitl. Fonzie says, though, Marcy, he hasn't texted them yet, and he's not going to until he sees them hoisting the cup tonight. We shall see.
Oh, super fun. All right, thanks, Scott.
You bet.
So we always, on these days where we know that sports fans are going to be coming together to watch and to enjoy, we want to know where you're watching. So where's your watch party tonight? Who are you with? Are you the biggest Oilers fan in Manitoba? Are you the only Oilers fan in Manitoba? And please call us and let us know. Maybe a CBC camera could find you. 788-3205. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 19 degrees. It is going to be a hot, sticky afternoon, mix of sun and clouds today. Windy, a high of 28. The humidex at 33 this afternoon. A Manitoba family is fighting for maternity benefits after their baby was born through surrogacy. Jacqueline Blazanovic's daughter was born in October. Now, Blazanovic works at Pan Am Clinic and met all the requirements for paid maternity leave under the collective agreement, except being able to provide a certificate of pregnancy and her estimated due date. Blazanovic was denied the top-up benefits.
Like, I'm not a mother. Like, I don't. Yeah, I guess sad. It's like I'm less of a person.
Her husband, Tim, says the couple wants equal treatment.
They refuse to wish to pay us because they're hanging on this thread that she's not the natural birth mother.
Jacqueline's currently getting about a third of her wages through employment insurance, but the 17-week paid maternity leave would have bumped her up to 93%. Now, a University of Manitoba law professor says he has never seen a case like this before. Bruce Curran specializes in labor and employment law. He read that collective agreement and has this to say.
Maternity leave under the collective agreement is viewed more or less as like the leave associated with biologically giving birth to a child. And this is where the dispute has arisen over the whole surrogacy issues.
Blazanovic's union, CUPE, is currently at the bargaining table, pushing for more progressive language when it comes to maternity leave for childbirth through surrogacy. You can hear more on this story in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. A fatal train collision in La Broquerie on a day that was to have been a celebration. Emergency crews could be seen around a rail crossing in the town near Steinbach yesterday afternoon. Reeve Ivan Normando confirms one person has died. The collision happened as the town held its annual Saint Jean-Baptiste parade celebrating French-Canadian culture. Jessica Hildebrand says everyone is in shock.
So many people in this community, even from outside the community, coming and sharing Saint Jean-Baptiste days with us. Is now, unfortunately, empty streets with this daunting train bell because of this unfortunate incident.
RCMP expect to release more details about what happened later today. Voters in the riding of Toronto-St. Paul's are casting their ballots today in a federal by-election.
Liberals aren't all that enthusiastic right now about Mr. Trudeau, about the government, and Conservatives are deeply motivated to get out and vote.
Pollster David Coletto, he expects the Liberals to win, considering they have held the riding for more than 30 years. But he says the Conservatives could make it close. Many analysts are calling this by-election a referendum on Justin Trudeau's leadership. We're expecting the Trudeau government to announce today it is looking to bring in tariffs to protect Canada's electric vehicle supply chain from Chinese competition. It's believed they'll be similar to the tariffs recently announced by the United States and European Union. They both allege Beijing unfairly subsidizes China's EV industry. Now, before Canada can take action, the Canadian International Trade Tribunal has to complete an anti-subsidy investigation. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. A teen who arrived in Canada last year says her time in a Winnipeg school has been life-changing. 19-year-old Arfa Adam Katir studied in Israel after her parents fled Sudan's civil war. She will graduate this week from the Winnipeg Adult Education Center, where she credits them for putting her on a path to university. And she, in fact, is headed to the University of British Columbia on an $80,000 scholarship. It comes from the Beyond Tomorrow Scholars Program, which assists Black Canadian students.
I'm proud of myself for doing that. Also, it's studying here. I'm studying English is my third language. So also doing my studies and getting high grades in my third language was also something that is very impressive.
And Katir dreams one day of becoming a doctor. You can find more on her story and other stories on our website this morning. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells in our news department this morning. All right. It's time for your regional forecast. 7:35. Abby's got the details.
I think it's more of like the day you'd need your air conditioning and you'd want to leave the windows open.
There is some rain just moving through the Saskatoon area at this hour. You did have rain in Prince Albert, but
and of course,
mostly cloudy
also
now.
remember
14
our
in
furry
PA.
friends, they're going to be thirsty and they can't speak, so you need to keep their bowls filled up with water. It's 19 at the moment, cloudy outside. The sun trying to make an appearance, but it's more like a hide and seek thing, peekaboo, and then it's gone. So it's like that's what we're seeing at the moment, and that's what we're going to get throughout the day. Just expect this mix of sun and clouds and a slight chance of morning showers, and a risk of thunderstorm also might come with that. It will be breezy though, with the temperatures rising to 28, though with the humidity it's going to be feeling like 33 today. And tonight we'll see the skies will gradually clear up, even though there's still the sign of stray thunderstorms possible to stay with us. Heading west to Brandon, 20 degrees at the moment, mostly cloudy at the moment. Anticipate a mix of sun and clouds throughout the day, a chance of showers or even thunderstorm this morning. That region will get to a high of 27 with some breezy conditions that will stay with you, though it's going to make it feel cooler at some point. Thompson is at 17 and partly cloudy. Today will feature mainly cloudy skies with showers possible. into the late morning time and into the afternoon, along with the risk of thunderstorm, and it will become breezy later in the day. We'll see highs around 20. Further north in Churchill, 4 degrees with mist at the moment. Today you should expect cloudy conditions with scattered light showers here and there and a risk of a thunderstorm. We're getting to highs of 10. Dauphin is sitting at 16. It will be a mix of southern clouds for today, heading to a high of 27. Still, Gimli, Steinbach, Morris all sitting at 18 at the moment. And the forecast for those regions, mix of sun and clouds, chance of showers or thunderstorm, breezy conditions, and we'll see highs hover between 27 and 28 for those regions. Right now, Winnipeg, we are currently at 19, heading to a high of 28.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
May McKillop's filling in for Corey Funk this morning and is here with commute details.
Great. So I'm looking at highway number 1 that is closed both eastbound and westbound at Headingley at the train tracks. There's some construction happening there. Detours are in place, but the closures are expected to run from today, Monday, until Friday. So expect delays there. And here in the city, I'm reading about a few different closures. Logan eastbound and westbound lanes are closed between McPhillips and Arlington, thanks to Jeff with a G who called that in, as well as on Inkster between Hutchings and Shepherd, and as well as Hugo Street closed between Corridon and McMillan. That's everything that I'm seeing so far. If you're out there commuting and you're seeing any closures on the road or having any troubles with your commute, give us a call. The phone number is 204-780-0893.
Thanks, May.
Thanks.
It is right now 22 minutes to 8 o'clock, and still ahead in this half hour, we're going to have a super fun conversation about a trend that apparently my father was ahead of, keeping his flip phone all these years. It is making a comeback, the flip phone, a simple phone. Some are calling it a dumb phone, just to contrast with the idea of a smartphone. So there's no internet on it. But who is driving this trend across Canada? And we'll find out more about it. So that's coming up in this half hour. If you're the keeper of an old phone, you know I want to see that phone. Radio 893 at cbc.ca. I promise overnight I'll try to dig out some of the oldies in our house. I think we've still got a brick phone lying around somewhere in a box at our house. As mentioned, 21 minutes to 8 o'clock. Next on the show, let's build on something you may have heard in the news just now with Heather. The story about a Manitoba couple that welcomed their child Amelia to the world last October. But Amelia was welcomed through surrogacy, and now they feel as though they're being discriminated against and left fighting for maternity benefits because they had their daughter through surrogacy. CBC's Gavin Axelrod spoke to the couple, Tim and Jacqueline Blazanovich, about their experience fighting for the same benefits they say that other parents receive.
My wife has been on maternity, depending on whose definition, it's either maternity or paternity, whether it's federal or provincial leave, since our little girl was born in October of 2023, October 22nd to be exact. And she was born to us through surrogacy, and because we've tried for 15 years to have our own family, and with no luck and 5 failed IVF attempts, we've decided that we're going to try surrogacy as a last resort, and hope that we could have a family for once and have our dreams and wishes come true. And so we're lucky enough to have this laughing little girl who is just a heartbreak for us. But the way the whole payments and funding for wages, everything through unemployment, through federal government drags on for months, and your bills collect and they don't care, and it doesn't matter how many times you call them. So that's one problem. But the real issue here on top of that, it stacks, right? It's one problem after another. Under the QP collective agreement for healthcare workers, as my wife works for the Pan Am Clinic, there's what they call a Schedule B top-up, which is supposed to help their employees because of the loss of wages or reduced wages that the federal government, to top up that wage to not full wages, but about 93% of their wage, so that they can continue paying their bills, et cetera, and feeding their child, et cetera. The problem in it is that the collective agreement states that she has to be the natural birth mother. So even though she's born of us through a surrogate, bearing our last name given to us at birth, and I have the pictures at the hospital when they wheeled her to us from birth, and they refuse to wish to pay us because they're hanging on this thread that she's not the natural birth mother. But yet provincial law states that the parent is the caregiver that looks after the child for the majority of their life to cover even adoption. So a law somehow is superseded by a contract. We've tried contacting numerous different levels of government and or departments to try and say, listen, this is stupid. Like, in today's day and age, do you know, for bestest frontline workers, blah, 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 why are you not looking after them? We've gone to the labor board. The labor board said, you need to talk to the union. The union brushed it off. The rep brushed it off immediately and said it's in the collective agreement. So I didn't accept that. And I said, no, that's garbage. You can't just brush it off like that. That's why we pay union dues. You need to fight for us. So I got a hold of their president and I said, listen, we need to file a grievance. And she's like, well, no, it's in the collective agreement. And I went, well, hang on a second. The labor board states that in good faith you need to act on your members' behalf regardless. So they have. They finally did, and they filed a grievance with the government to try and resolve this. Unfortunately, though, as I was told, this could take years. In the meantime, bills keep coming. She keeps eating. It's 8 months later. Diapers need to be purchased. Bills, this doesn't stop. So while that's fine and dandy, it's also very unfair. And we're just looking for equality because she pays the same union dues as all the other people who work for the province and all the other staff who get pregnant and have a child. We can't be the only ones that have done surrogacy. We can't be the only ones that think this is unfair. That's all we want is equality. And this should, I can't blame our current provincial government because A, they're new, and B, this has been going on for decades. This isn't something that's new. The fact that this has been going on for decades is disturbing, but this didn't happen yesterday. This is something that's been going on for a while. So we're just looking to try and get equal and fair treatment.
Tim and Jacqueline Blazanovich speaking there with CBC's Gavin Axelrod about their maternity benefits being denied. They filed a complaint, as he said, with CUPE, but the matter has to be settled through the union's grievance procedure, which could take years. We have reached out to the province and the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, the WRHA. We've not had a response as of yet. For more information on the story and to see pictures of that beautiful little baby, you can read it on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you.
Liftoff.
Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1 and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
19 in Winnipeg, a high of 28 on your Monday morning here with Humidex 33. It's going to be sticky if you're heading out the door. Take an umbrella just in case. It's probably part of your regular pack these days in Manitoba anyway, given the weather. But we do have a 30% chance we'll see some showers. They may be behind us already, but it could be really sticky today. If you're lucky to have the day off and be by a beach or a body of water or a splash pad, today's probably a pretty good day to do it. Well, coming up on the program after 8 o'clock, the province says the landfill search for the remains of 2 Indigenous women is set to begin later this year. But how will it proceed? How do landfill searches actually work? We're going to talk to a former U.S. police chief who led a landfill search in Nebraska to shed some light on what Manitobans might expect to unfold as this search begins. He says in part he's surprised that it is not beginning earlier actually in the summer. So we're going to hear why as we hear and learn from his experience. So stay tuned. He's on after 8. Next on the show, though, a little music, new music from husband and wife duo, local duo Burnstick. They recently shared their second album, Made of Sin, it's called. The record captures the tumultuous nature of the world around us and the complex connections, they say, that tie us all together. Ain't that the truth? This is Burnstick with Seasons. Pretty, hey? Beautiful vocals there and lovely harmonies from Burnstick in Winnipeg with Seasons. Their new album is out now. It's called Made of Sin. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's 10 to 8 now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thanks for joining us wherever you're tuned in. Just a note about something that begins today. Highway 1 in Headingley, west of 334, is closed. They're doing railway crossing repairs. We did get a call about it. There's detours in place that'll help you get around that area. Also, this is the last week for Louise Bridge to be fully closed as well in Winnipeg. It's supposed to be reopened by the 28th, so we'll see how that goes. Any other urgent things in traffic, please call May at 788-3093. Well, up next on CBC, for most people, the flip phone went out of style over 10 years ago. With no apps, no email, and no internet browser, they can't really compete with smartphones. But for a growing group of Canadians, the lack of internet connectivity is the appeal. They're swapping their smartphones for what some are calling dumb phones. Nisha Patel is a reporter with CBC and has been following this trend. Good morning.
Good morning.
All of a sudden, my dad's cool again. He wears tall socks and he carries a flip phone. What exactly is meant by dumb phone, and what other names do they go by?
Yeah, so you got it right there. They are mobile devices, only have the most basic functions. So making calls, there's no social media, there's no apps like Apple Pay. They're also called phones, and dumb phones really sprang up, because they're not as smart as smartphones. There's some called boring phones, and a lot of them are the flip phones.
What's driving the trend?
I think that they have been popular for a long time, years, with people in the trade. A lot of people are growing tired of being constantly connected. So they're maybe looking for a digital. There are a lot of parents who are looking to track of their kids, and they don't want to expose them to the negative effects of screens, and so they're looking at these.
Nisha, in a spot of irony here, we're going to disconnect and recall you back. We got a terrible phone line. You're cutting out every second word.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
All right. Call you right back.
Thanks.
Live radio, folks. 8 minutes to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app or YouTube. So I'm going to tell you what I was going to prompt at the end of the interview. I'll just do that now while we're getting Nisha back on the line, and hopefully we'll get a better line. We'll give this a shot. But we want to know, I would love to know, if you think you have the oldest phone in Manitoba. Now, we're not talking about a corded phone, but do you have an old school car phone maybe? Maybe there's a phone in your car. Or do you have one of those big brick phones that would go back to like the 90s, maybe older, maybe something from the 80s? Somewhere in your life or in a box somewhere, maybe in a basement, do you think you have the oldest on-the-go phone, mobile phone in Manitoba? If you do, take a picture of it and we'll see tomorrow how we do. 788-3205 if you want to tell us about it. Anisha is back. Good morning, Nisha.
Hi, Marcy. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Much better line here. So you said this was driven a lot by people that are looking maybe at the next generation, their kids, maybe Gen Zs and millennials thinking about the future and seeing maybe the negative mental health effects of being plugged in all the time?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. And so there is an increased interest in dumb phones. Sales in Canada last year grew by 20% compared to the year before. And so there is this interest, especially because, there's lots of research that shows that we have shorter attention spans. We get distracted more. We have our memories are worse for excessive cell phone use. And so, that is one of the things that drive me. And then, of course, there's the limited access to social media, which can really affect our mental health. Just last week, the U.S. in general, that social media should have warning signs like cigarettes. And so taking all that together, I think people are looking at these dumb phones and saying we should, cut back on usage of them.
It's still a niche trend, we should say. I mean, it's interesting to talk about, to see where it's going to go. But right now, I mean, it's not threatening the smartphone in terms of taking market share, right?
Dumb phones are still less than 1% of the total phone market. Smartphones, not hacks to banking or maps or any of those tools that we use every day. But I do think that there is sort of a new market, and that is from these people who want to disconnect for a period of time. So maybe they get a dumb phone as a secondary phone. For a lot of these parents who are looking at phones for their kids, maybe they go to a dumb phone first before they go to a smartphone. So I think there is a new market. I think it's going to be the market.
What do you think about costs? It's interesting because we're talking about the social costs, but could this actually end up, gaining steam maybe to have a simpler phone because you're going to be paying less because you're not going to be paying all that data?
Yeah, dumb phones actually on the whole are cheaper too. They cost about $100 for the majority of them, so that's a big difference right there. And then your plan is only talk and text, so you can get that probably for about $25 a month. So yeah, I think there is a real savings there, especially for parents who are looking for something that their kid might lose.
What's the oldest phone that you remember having, Nisha?
Oh, gosh, I think it was my Nokia flip phone back in the 2000s. I tried to dig out my box of old phones the other day when I was working on this story, but I think my husband got rid of it. So I'll have to look again and see what's out there.
Somewhere in my home, there's a shoebox with a brick phone from the 90s, maybe even the 80s, with one of those antenna that comes up. You actually physically pull the big antenna up.
Oh, my goodness.
I have to find it for tomorrow, given that we're talking about this.
I just watched E.T. with my kids the other day, and they had those, and it was just, they didn't even know what it was. They asked, what is that tool that they're using? They couldn't recognize it.
100%. Thank you very much for walking through this with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
So obviously we had some phone challenges with Nisha, and our apologies. I mean, how ironic is that? But Nisha Patel, reporter with CBC, we reached her this morning in Toronto to talk about this trend. So we're talking about the fun stuff, right? Sending us pictures. You have the oldest phone in Manitoba, all of that. But we are wondering, I'm also wondering whether or not you're on board with this trend, whether or not it's something that you would think about doing, and why. Why would you give up a smartphone for something simpler? 788-3205, 788-3205. Let's take some calls on that. It is now 3 minutes to 8 o'clock on CBC 89.3 FM, and Heather Wells joins us with our news headlines this Monday morning. Hello again.
Hello. Well, people in La Broquerie are in shock this morning after a fatal train collision cast a shadow on yesterday's Saint Jean-Baptiste Day celebrations. The reeve there, Ivan Normando, confirms one person has died. It happened as the town near Steinbach was holding its annual parade. We expect to learn more from RCMP later today. A refugee from Ukraine will soon have his graduation dreams realized. 18-year-old Valentin Slobodian moved to Winnipeg last year from war-torn Ukraine. This week, he graduates from West Kildonan Collegiate and plans to continue with his schooling. He wants to go to Asper School of Business. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, let's get into what's happening in traffic. So the Louise Bridge closed till June 28th. One more week, folks. Also, Highway 1 in Headingley, this just started this morning, just west of 334, is now closed as well. That's both directions. They're addressing some railway crossing repairs. So that is also supposed to be in effect all week until June 28th. There is clearly marked detours through the area, so you'll find that if you're heading through Headingley on number 1. Call us if anything else is major and affecting your drive, 788-3093, or your walk or your way in. In the terms of the weather forecast this morning, it's sticky. A high of 28, humidex 33, 19 is our temperature right now. Winds are southeast at 36 already, and it's going to be windy today, because they're going to be blowing from the southwest. They'll take a shift and they'll be blowing 30, gusting to 50 kilometers per hour in Winnipeg. So that's what we're looking for in terms of what's happening in our Monday forecast. Tonight, partly cloudy in case it's your grad night. There is a risk of a thunderstorm, going to be windy, low 16. Tomorrow, sunshine and a high of 22. So a return to a bit of a more moderate day, but still looking pretty nice. Stay with us. Lots more to come after 8 o'clock, including a discussion with a U.S. police chief who led a landfill search. He's going to talk and shed some light on what we might expect here as we embark at Prairie Green.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Gracie Abrams has had a big year. She released her debut album, was nominated for Best New Artist at the Grammys, and opened for Taylor Swift. When the pop machine and its producers and writers came for Gracie, she said no and wrote songs with her roommate instead. She'll tell you why. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
A Vancouver woman was forced to move to get access to medical assistance in dying because the hospital where she was staying bans the procedure. Now her family is suing, saying public hospitals shouldn't be able to opt out. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. In just a few hours, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Trade Minister Mary Ng are going to make an announcement about protecting Canadian auto workers. It comes as the federal government is under growing pressure to join the United States and put a tariff on electric vehicles from China. Janice McGregor joins us now from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, this is a sign is this a sign that Canada will follow the United States?
Marcia, this isn't simply a question of whether Canada falls into line with the Americans and announces tariffs on Chinese EVs. How Canada does it matters. Chrystia Freeland doesn't have the powers equivalent to Section 301 tariffs in the U.S. to allow her to simply match a 100% tariff. If Canada suspects China's exports are unfairly subsidized, the federal government has to investigate that first, calculate the economic damage of unfair trade practices, and then calculate its own tariff in response. So we'll see if the ministers kick off that process today and whether a Canadian investigation could even happen in time to line up with August 1st when the higher U.S. tariffs kick in. If China does not get due process, Canada risks harsh retaliation for violating world trade rules. But Freeland and Trade Minister Mary Ng are under pressure to act fast, not just from their U.S. counterparts, but Ontario's government too. Here's Economic Development Minister Vic Fideli.
It's not really about our relationship with China. This is really all about our relationship with our number one trading partner, the U.S.
Federal Conservatives said Friday they're going to wait to see what happens before commenting, but the federal NDP totally on board with matching U.S. tariffs. Its industry critic Brian Massey said Friday that time and time again, governments react to threats instead of being proactive on these trade challenges.
The EU has already done something similar. How is that playing out with China?
Not well. Although the two sides in that simmering trade war spoke over the weekend seeking some kind of talks after the EU's intent to put a 38% tariff on Chinese EVs sparked not only threats of litigation at the World Trade Organization, but also a tit-for-tat retaliation against European pork products.
All right, thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. U.S. officials are expressing growing concern about an Israeli offensive into Lebanon. They are urging restraint just hours after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said some troops would be leaving Gaza and moving towards the Lebanon border. CBC's senior international correspondent Margaret Evans has more.
The sound of Israeli jets crisscrossing the skies of northern Israel is a near constant these days. Cross-border attacks between Israel's military and Hezbollah in Lebanon increasing, along with fears that the longer the war in Gaza continues, the greater the possibility of it spreading. Ofer Shala is a military analyst with an Israeli think tank.
If there's no stoppage to the war in Gaza and this goes on, we escalate and they escalate, we're getting closer. The margin for error is becoming smaller, ever smaller all the time.
In a rare interview with the local TV channel last night, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the intense phase of the Gaza war was nearing its end, despite reports from Gaza of more civilian deaths in Israeli airstrikes over the weekend. Netanyahu said it would allow Israel to move some of its troops north for what he said would be defensive purposes. Before boarding a plane to Washington last night, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said he'll be discussing both Gaza and Lebanon with U.S. officials. The United States is our most important and central ally, he's saying, probably more important now than ever. Gallant's visit follows an ill-tempered outburst by Benjamin Netanyahu accusing the U.S. administration of withholding weapons from Israel. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Northern Israel.
In South Korea, at least 22 people have died in a fire at a lithium battery factory. South Korea's interior minister walks around a charred building just south of Seoul. Firefighters are pointing out the extent of the damage. About 100 workers were on site when the fire started, and most of the deceased were workers from China. Officials say the fire was started by a series of exploding battery cells. It's not clear what caused the explosion. In Churchill Falls, Labrador, firefighters are still holding back the wildfire threatening the town. Officials say they've created a fire break around the community to help slow the flames. About 100 evacuees are still in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Newfoundland and Labrador's Premier Andrew Furey says it's unclear when people will be able to return to their homes.
It remains a threat to the community, but the crews are doing an absolutely incredible job, and that has allowed the fire to really remain largely contained.
In Quebec, fire crews are trying to contain wildfires burning on the North Shore. Hundreds of residents from Port Cartier are out of their homes. They were ordered to leave on Friday. An Ontario woman who lied about her daughter's Inuit status is about to be sentenced for fraud. Karima Manji's twin daughters have been receiving big scholarships meant for Inuit students. She's scheduled to be sentenced today in Iqaluit, and as Juanita Taylor tells us, this is not her first fraud conviction.
Karima Manji will be facing a Nunavut judge this afternoon to learn her fate for defrauding an Inuit organization of nearly $160,000 in scholarship money meant for Inuit students. Manji applied for Nunavut beneficiary status for her twin daughters, Amira and Nadia Gill, claiming they are Inuit she adopted from an Iqaluit woman. She pleaded guilty back in February. This is Manji's second time facing a fraud conviction. In 2015, she pleaded guilty to defrauding her employer, the March of Dimes nonprofit housing corporation, of $800,000. The Ontario organization provides shelter for people with disabilities. Nunavut Mute are anxious to hear what kind of sentence Karima Manji will be getting today for her daughter's financial gain from the Kakivak Association. Noah is the son of the Inuk woman whom Manji claimed was her daughter's birth mother.
The harms of this kind of a crime, it's victimized my mom, but it victimized other Inuit kids trying to apply on those grants and funds as well.
The Gill sisters were also charged with fraud along with their mother last year, but those charges have been dropped. Manji is taking full responsibility for the crime and claims her daughters weren't aware she had fraudulently obtained their Inuit status. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Iqaluit.
The U.S. Supreme Court could soon be deciding the future of emergency room abortions. The justices are weighing whether doctors can provide emergency abortions in states where the procedure is banned. Today marks 2 years since the court overturned Roe v. Wade. That made abortion a constitutional right in the U.S. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what are we expecting today?
Yeah, we're expecting major demonstrations in front of the Supreme Court, and the Women's March have organized demonstrations in cities across the country. But there's another major decision that's expected any day now on whether federal laws mandating emergency abortions can override a state ban. Now, this stems from a law in Idaho where abortions are banned, and the question is whether doctors can perform abortions for emergency treatment. So a decision on that could have more widespread impact nationwide. Now, since Roe was overturned, more than 14 Republican-led states have banned abortions completely. Other states have implemented major restrictions. So, of course, this has sparked protest, legal challenges, and has become a major political issue heading into November's election.
What are we hearing from the politicians as this presidential race heats up?
Yeah, so this anniversary comes just days before the first presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and Democrats are making women's rights central to their campaign. Vice President Kamala Harris took aim at Trump over the weekend.
He said he is, and I'm going to quote, proudly responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade and taking freedom of choice from millions of women in our country.
Now, former President Donald Trump is leaning into it and taking credit for the 3 conservative judges he appointed who reversed federal abortion protections. So not only is abortion a political issue, it's also on the ballot this fall. At least 4 states have ballot measures asking voters to protect or expand access to abortion.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime. CBCnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good Monday morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thanks for spending time with us this morning. It is a sticky Monday. We've got another system moving through here that's going to bring us a really warm day today. Abby's in with those forecast details to start our week in just a moment. Also, we have a couple of traffic closures that are pretty big ones, so we'll hear more about those as well. This half hour on the program, the province says the landfill search for the remains of the 2 Indigenous women is set to begin later this year. Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron are thought to be buried in Prairie Green landfill. But how do searches actually work and what can be expected as Manitoba moves through this process? We're going to talk to a former U.S. police chief who led a landfill search in Nebraska. He'll shed some light on what may be about to unfold in Manitoba. Stay tuned. Right now, though, let's go to other news and headlines. Heather Wells joins us with an update. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba family says they are being discriminated against because they had their daughter through surrogacy in October. They don't qualify for maternity benefits. Tim Blazanovic says his wife can't get top-up benefits from her job at Pan Am Clinic. She met all the requirements for paid maternity leave under their collective agreement, except being able to provide a certificate of pregnancy and her estimated due date. He says all they want is equal treatment. We're going to hear more from him coming up. And we expect to learn more from RCMP today about a deadly train collision in La Broquerie. It happened yesterday while the town was celebrating John Baptiste Day. A parade was underway. Now people in La Broquerie are in shock. That story as well coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Yeah, really thinking about everybody out there. That must have just been really terrible. So we'll await more details this morning. Right now, let's get more details on the forecast. Abby, I keep using the word muggy, the words like sticky.
I think we should just say sticky because that's going to be greasy. Yeah,
right?
That should also be. You definitely some sweat will definitely happen. Some sweating will happen. It's currently 19 degrees in the city, partly cloudy here in Winnipeg. We will see a mix of sun and clouds throughout the day. Now, there's a slight chance of showers this morning, and we may experience some thunderstorm to come with that. It will be breezy with high reaching 28 degrees. With a humidex, it's going to be feeling like 33 in the city today. Tonight, as we move into the evening period, expect partly cloudy skies to become clear as we get into the night. And then there's also that risk of a thunderstorm from the earlier part of the day that will stay with us all evening. The winds will remain breezy and the temperature will drop to around 16 degrees. Thompson is at 17 at the moment. Churchill is seeing light showers. Brandon 20. Dauphin 22. The south is more like hovering around the 20s, but Winnipeg is currently at 19 degrees and heading to a high of 28.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, let's get into the traffic issues this morning. And I mentioned a big closure that just starts today. Hi, May.
Hi, good morning. This big closure is out in Headingley along the train track. So this is on Highway number 1. Both eastbound and westbound lanes are closed. So they have set up detours in place, and this closure runs from today until Friday. So expect delays if you're getting out of the city on Highway number 1. And here in the city, we have a couple of closures I'm going to tell you all about. The first is on Logan. Eastbound and westbound lanes are closed between McPhillips and Arlington. Thank you to Jeff with a G for calling that in. As well as a closure on Inkster between Hutchings and Shepherd, and a closure on Hugo between Cordon and McMillan. That's all for today. If anyone's seeing anything urgent out there and they want to call it in, I'm waiting on the phone. So the number to call is 204-788-3093.
And May just slightly misspoke there. It's 780-0893, 780-0893. But please give us a call if you do see any problems in traffic. Well, a warning that our first interview this half hour does include disturbing details. The search of a Winnipeg area landfill for the remains of 2 victims of an admitted serial killer is expected to start in the fall. Late fall is what we're being told. It's believed the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron are buried in the landfill at Prairie Green. Last week, the Manitoba government laid out in some great detail about how it's going to conduct this search. Now, some of those details include manually searching through the debris, doing a test search of an area of the landfill to give searchers an idea of what they might be dealing with. The search area involves 3 sections where it's believed the women's remains may be. The sections are as large as about 4 football fields. The maximum depth is 10 meters. Now, Brian Paulson is our next guest and with us via Zoom. He was chief of police in Plattsmouth, Nebraska in 2003 and was part of a grim task of searching a landfill for the body of a young boy. He says 6 months had passed since the boy had been killed and disposed. They looked for 45 days, but they did eventually move on. Paulson later conducted a study on landfill searches to find out how often they succeed. And he joins us via Zoom from Sturgis, South Dakota, where he is the assistant police chief. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us again. I know you were with us at the start of the conversation about the possibility of this happening. So we appreciate you being here now to walk us through potentially what our next steps could look like.
Sure.
So I want to start by asking you your thoughts on the search is set to begin late fall. It's been nearly 2 years since the women's bodies were left there. What's your reaction on the timeline, first of all?
Well, it's a monumental task coming 2 years after the fact. I will tell you that landfills keep immaculate records. They know where the trash is put every day, and that they should be able to pinpoint some areas. As you know, 3 football fields seems like a lot, but at 10 meters, it won't be a lot of overburden. When I say overburden, I'm talking about the material above the site that they may be looking at, whether it's 5 foot, 5 meters down, or if it's down on the bottom of the landfill itself. They're constructed pretty much the same way. So any landfill that you go into is going to be built bottom to top. Pretty similar no matter where you're at.
Okay. Now, I know that this is an interesting thing that the Free Press Winnipeg Free Press is reporting this morning. They have spoken to an anthropology professor, Eric Bartlink, and he said there's a chance that some of the remains could be found relatively intact. Because when you have a material on top, there's no exposure to elements like if a body is found in a forest and such. What's your reaction to that, or can you add to that?
Well, we actually found that having gone into the landfill search here in Nebraska, we got to the bottom of the landfill. Our body was placed in the landfill in January. We found snow and ice that was preserved, and we went in late June, early July. So temperatures in probably the 90s, but then reaching the bottom of the landfill, the temperature was about 32 degrees Fahrenheit. We also found material, roast beef, turkey, chicken, carrots, all that were preserved. There was no, other than being dirty and aged in the landfill, they looked remarkably well for being in the landfill for 6 months. That seal on the top of the landfill at the end of each day prevents oxygen from getting in there. And without oxygen, there aren't many biological agents or germs that'll break it down very quickly. So we were shocked at what we found at the bottom of the landfill.
So, and I apologize for this graphic question. Obviously, this entire interview is upsetting and graphic, but is it possible then, by what you're saying, that if you were to find human remains in the landfill, that you may even find like tissue intact? I'm just surprised at what you're talking about.
No, absolutely. We weren't sure what we would find. Our search was unsuccessful, but finding that material, as well as some other materials that are called midnight dumping in the States, basically the illegal products that are put into a landfill. A family they had a farming accident, clothes that were saturated with blood were found in that landfill and had not decomposed. We had a cadaver dog in the landfill that alerted. We hand dug in that area, found this material, and then tracked it backwards. But remarkably, things don't decompose that quickly in a landfill.
Tell me a little bit about the way the search is conducted. So this search is going to be done manually. Notably, an earlier feasibility study on the landfill search recommended sifting through debris on a conveyor belt. I know that manually they're going to be moving the material to another building and then searching. What are the benefits of doing a manual search?
Obviously, it protects you from the elements inside that building, but the manual search was fairly consistent for us. We had a number of volunteers that were in the landfill and they searched it by hand, obviously overseen by law enforcement who, once that material was searched, law enforcement would clear it and then it was moved off manually with bulldozers. All of our search was done outside, not in the building. Our mechanics were excavators digging out the overburden and getting down to the spot we needed to, placing the suspect material where we were hoping to find the young boy in garbage trucks, or excuse me, not garbage trucks, but dump trucks. They would bring it out of the landfill, lay it on a fresh dirt pad about 100 yards, football field length, and then another excavator, a smaller excavator, would come through and kind of sift it, thin it out for the manual laborers. Once the mechanical equipment was done. They went in with forks or pitchforks and cob forks, rakes, a number of hose, a number of material pieces of tools to go through that material, and it was hand searched that way. Once it was cleared again, it was pushed off. So it was just a cycle throughout the day.
What's the emotional impact on those actually doing the search?
It's extremely hard. There were several that came in and would only do it for a day or two. And then they would say, I just can't continue to do this. And I think it was a lot of the fear. And then really the whole psychological aspect of human body being thrown in a dumpster, that we now have to recognize that human bodies, human people are disposable. And that's a tough pill to swallow. At the same token, we had a number of folks, probably 10 to 12, who searched every day with us. And they were just in a good place mentally. We put mental health professionals on site, not necessarily at the search site, but they were within the landfill itself, probably half a mile, 3/4 of a mile away. And if anybody felt that they were stressed or not being able to cope well with what we were doing, they were going to be taken into the mental health profession. We also set that up for recovery, that whoever was to discover the young boy, if we would have discovered him, was going to need help or assistance mentally, because these were just volunteers. We originally started with only first responders, but then we opened it up to civilians because we needed more help.
If what I'm hearing from you is correct, then we have some things going for us here in terms of success. The depth that was mentioned, 10 meters. But
very much so.
Obviously, 2 years is a long time after something. After the case developed and the remains were left there. How important is time frame, just to look at that aspect of a search?
So for my research, I determined that it was about 30 days for a successful search. Then the results or the potential for a positive outcome, the recovery of body, drastically drops. And it was pretty immediately at the end of 30 days. One of the best things that you have going for you is if they have those readings, those GPS readings of that trash coming in on those days, they can really zero in and say, okay, this is where we're at. And then the depth obviously is much, much shorter, not as deep as it was here. We were probably 30 foot down in our landfill here after that 6-month time period. So there's a lot of positive going on with your particular search, potentially when it comes.
I want to honor the life of the little boy that you already alluded to that you did not find. Can you share in so much as you would like to about the case you were involved in Nebraska?
Well, Brendan was murdered by his father on January 5th, early morning of January 5th, and then disposed of a dumpster in about an hour and a half time frame between the murder and the dumping of the landfill. And then we did an extensive search. We did 2 weeks of landfill or land search. We had posses and people on foot, multiple utility vehicles, as well as just other departments. We searched there. We did a sand pit search because it was the only water that was open in January. But we did not recover that young man. The father had an outburst in court in April of that year of 2003, where he pronounced in front of the judge and a gallery full of reporters that he did indeed kill his son. And that was the first acknowledgement we had. And then he waited about a month before he finally told us what he had done. Then that started the landfill. So we were unsuccessful, but another part of our landfill was that we kept the mother and grandmother, his closest relatives, very well or highly involved in the search itself, only with information. One of the things that we wanted to do was protect our searchers from the family. They were emotional. We felt that it wouldn't be good to have them at the site. So we asked them to stay away, but they were briefed every day as to what we had done, what we had accomplished, and where we thought we were going to be going the next day.
Our premier has previously stated that the search could continue into early 2026. What do you make of that?
I think that's a great commitment. It tells me that the government, the premier, is indeed wanting to recover these ladies. There's value in them, and I think the premier is giving a long-term search prognosis as definitely as a positive that we're going to find them. It will become tedious after a certain period of time, but with that type of commitment, I think the recovery is very possible.
Brian Paulson, thank you very much for your time and your unique insight today. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Via Zoom, Brian Paulson's been with us, Assistant Police Chief in Sturgis, South Dakota. He conducted studies and has written about landfill searches.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Lift off. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1, and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
Whether it's breaking news from around the world, across the country, or in your own hometown, it's all at your fingertips on the CBC News app. Get the top stories from where you live under the local tab, or watch video clips, live events, and the national on your smartphone or tablet. Get all the news you want, when you want it, where you want it, with the CBC News app. Download the app for free today.
Where are you watching the hockey game tonight? We want to know. 788-3205 if you are on the Oilers bandwagon. Pretty hard not to be in this country right now. 19 degrees in Winnipeg. It's mostly cloudy out there. Our high today, 28 with humidex 33. Big closure in traffic just started this morning. Highway 1 in Headingley, both directions, just west of 334. Is closed. The closure to allow for railway crossing repairs. There are detours that have been put in place. Well, we have recently talked about something that is a plant that's called hellflower or hell's bells or zombie weed. I'm talking about creeping bellflower with these little purple-blue flowers. We were recently talking about how to cook with the perennial, but a lot of people just want to get rid of it. Sarah Verdiel has some ideas about how to do that. She's a technician with Integrated Pest Management Division in Calgary.
It's certainly something that is pretty, and some people sort of get distracted by the fact that it's pretty. And once you get distracted, it takes a hold, and it's very, very, very challenging to get rid of. It spreads through rhizomes, which are underground sort of stems that it spreads laterally, and it can sprout up from those rhizomes. It also spreads by seeds, and each one of the stalks of flowers can produce thousands, up to 15,000 seeds. So it's really doing a twofold way of sort of spreading. And those rhizomes can even spread like under sidewalks, under fences. So even if you don't know that it's next door, it could be coming for you. It's really sort of a long game that you're going to be playing if this is something you're going to be wanting to get rid of. So digging deep, you're probably going to have to dig repeatedly, maybe repeatedly in one season, and probably repeated over several years. Also, you want to make sure that you're cutting off those flowers before they go to seed, so that you're not fighting it on two fronts at the same time. With a lot of rhizomatous weeds and creeping bellflower in general, it can grow back from the tiniest portion that you leave behind. So leaving one little bit and then maybe taking a break could mean that it just pops up almost sort of in the same kind of levels as you were facing before. So it really is continually working on this to get rid of it. Any invasive weeds that you find in your garden, if you put them in your compost, particularly in your backyard compost, you are putting them in a great environment for them to grow and take over your compost. And then if you spread that through your garden, you could be inadvertently spreading it through your garden. So you should be putting it in a garbage bag, sealing it up tight, and putting it in your garbage bin. It's probably never going to go away unless every single person, really commits to all of the actions needed to eradicate it. I think it's going to be sort of a problem that we just have to deal with.
That's Sarah Verdiel. She's a technician with the Integrated Pest Management Division out in Calgary, talking, though, about something that we have, whether we love it or not, in Manitoba, creeping bellflower and how to get rid of it. Right now, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It is mostly cloudy, 19 degrees. That wind is already starting to pick up. We'll see a windy afternoon. It's going to be a mix of sun and clouds and hot and sticky. Today's high, 28. The humidex, 33. A fatal train collision in La Broquerie on a day that was to have been a celebration. Emergency crews could be seen all around a rail crossing in the town near Steinbach yesterday afternoon. Reeve Ivan Normando has confirmed one person has died. The collision happened as the town held its annual Saint Jean-Baptiste parade celebrating French-Canadian culture. Jessica Hildebrand says everyone is in shock.
So many people in this community, even from outside the community, coming and sharing Saint Jean-Baptiste days with us. Is now, unfortunately, empty streets with this daunting train bell because of this unfortunate incident.
RCMP expect to release more details about what happened later today. A Manitoba family says they are being discriminated against because they had their daughter through surrogacy last October. They do not qualify for maternity benefits. Tim Blazanovic says his wife, Jacqueline, can't get up the top-up benefits from her job at the Pan Am Clinic. She met all requirements for paid maternity leave under the collective agreement, except being able to provide a certificate of pregnancy and an estimated due date.
We're just looking for equality because she pays the same union dues as all the other people who work for the province and all the other staff who get pregnant and have a child. We can't be the only ones that have done surrogacy. We can't be the only ones that think this is unfair. That's all we want is equality.
Jacqueline's currently getting about a third of her wages through employment insurance, but the 17-week paid maternity leave would have bumped her up to 93%. Meanwhile, a local law professor says there are lessons to be learned from this family's fight for maternity benefits. Bruce Curran specializes in labor and employment law at the University of Manitoba Faculty of Law. He read the collective agreement at Pan Am Clinic and says different family structures should be taken into account in workplace agreements.
Any employer and union, but also the general public, should take this as an opportunity to perhaps rethink what are our standard kind of plans or how we typically handle these kinds of leaves.
Meanwhile, Blazanovic's union, CUPE, is currently at the bargaining table pushing for more progressive language when it comes to maternity leave for childbirth through surrogacy. A refugee from Ukraine will soon have his graduation dreams realized. 18-year-old Valentin Slobodian moved to Winnipeg last year from war-torn Ukraine. This week, he graduates from West Kildonan Collegiate. His family's business was destroyed during Russia's full-scale invasion.
First day of a war was crazy, and I can say that lots of Ukrainians can relate to me. I woke up at 6 a.m. and we were hearing lots of bombing around the area.
Slobodian says he has been working 2 or 3 jobs here to save money for his education, and he plans to continue his education by studying at Asper School of Business. Buckingham Palace says Princess Anne has been injured. The 73-year-old has minor injuries and a concussion. It happened on her Gatcombe Park estate yesterday. The palace says she is in hospital as a precaution and is expected to make a full and swift recovery. Well, with hockey fans across the country ready to explode, the Edmonton Oilers are in Florida tonight for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. It is a dramatic winner-take-all match, with the resilient Oilers on the verge of giving Canada its first cup in more than 3 decades. As well, they are looking to become only the second team in NHL history to erase a 3-0 series lead in a Stanley Cup final. But for the Edmonton players, all that is just background noise. Here is Oiler forward Leon Draisaitl.
We're all human and we're aware of the situation and what we've accomplished so far. But, I think if you go past that, it just at the end of the day comes down to one game. We have to focus on winning one hockey game on the road, and everything else, all the stories, will take care of itself after.
And I'm pretty sure much of the country is going to be watching. Game time tonight for the Oilers and Panthers is 7 o'clock Central. You can find more news updated throughout the day, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
You do anything special to watch the game, Heather, or are you just going to take it in on your own?
I think my husband and I are just going to watch it quietly. Probably not so quietly, maybe, but yeah, we'll watch it. What about you?
Oh, yeah. That's same in my house for sure. I'm probably going to be on text with a couple of mega hockey fans in my life. So I love a good game when something's at stake. I can't believe they forced a Game 7. It's just such a cool sports story.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's one of those nail-biting things, though, right? A lot of tension tonight.
Yep, there will be. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
It is 8:35 a.m. In traffic. Last word here. Highway 1 Headingley, west of 334, closed. Railway crossing repairs. That's going to extend for the week. There's detours in place. Also, the Louise Bridge remains closed, and that is also going to be for the remainder of this week. Abby, last look at the weather situation.
I'll just tell you, across the province, Winnipeg is it's going to be experiencing hot, humid and sticky afternoon. That's coming. Currently we're at 19 degrees. We're going to touch 28 today. Up north, Thompson will see cloudy conditions, while Churchill's also going to see cloudy conditions. Highs for Thompson 20, Churchill 10. And the south, all around 20 at the moment, but we'll be getting to 27 and it's going to be feeling like 36.
Well, that will lead perfectly into the current, because in a moment they're going to be discussing great summer reads. And what's the recipe that makes a great summer read? You might get some ideas about titles to add to your list. So stay tuned for the current here in a few minutes. Big thanks, though, to our team that put the show together this morning. All of our hardworking APs, our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson, and our live show team this morning, Kevin Nipatebo, May McKillop, and Abby Adiyemi, all behind the glass. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Take care. Be well, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on CBC.